I'm always hoping that if I do get sent to prison, it's for something that's like completely mundane, and that way you don't piss
Yep.
off anybody when you go to prison. You
Debt
know,
or something, like debtor's
dead,
prison.
yeah, like something weird. So when you go to prison, people are like, "Hey, why are you here?" You tell them, and everybody's all, I can't really
I
hate you
get
for
it.
that.
Yeah,
I get it.
I
You're
get it.
like, listen, I had 77 jaywalking violations, and they're like, you were in a busy town, and it makes sense. Sup, everybody? This is Carrick with ACG. I'm here with Johnny and Silver doing the Best Gaming Podcast number 501. We're gonna be talking about Switch 2 and did it switch enough? Because I think that's the question that I got. It was interesting. What I saw, pretty much what I expected, but it was interesting. Some of the DMs I got from some other creators and some users in our Discord about the idea of that as a handheld and where it's headed. We're going to talk about Sony canceling more service games and where they're going for their first party. We will talk about Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Dose. SBZ, $5 super chat. Let's see if this goal thing works. It should work, damn it. And we're going to talk about possibly some side stuff here as well at the end. We'll probably wrap up with some stuff that I thought was pretty interesting. We'll also talk about what games we suck at, because that popped up in a discussion. I believe it was in the Iron Lord's voice text chat, and we were talking about games we were good at. And then when we started talking about games we suck at, you sort of realize you can count the games you're good at on so few fingers, but it's like the moment you start looking at games you suck at, it's like, damn, if we were like judging how good or whatever I am at this particular thing, I suck. It was a fun discussion. And whatever these guys want to bring to the table and whatever you guys want to bring to the table, we have a ton of Discord questions. I think I've captured every one of them, but before we start, I'm going to make one last check to verify I got everybody there and everybody in the patrons. Also for patrons, you should be seeing early, we've got the early audio thing pretty much nailed down, so you should get early access to the audio for these pretty much right away. It takes a little bit for us to start that. We had an issue a couple weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago now, where we had some technical issues, and that one took me until 8 p.m. that night to get fixed. But for the most part, if you're a YouTube member or you are a patron, you should get the audio, no ads version of this within maybe an hour and a half of us going live. Spetsu, what's up, buddy? PLN 29.99. Love you guys. Keep it up. Thank you very much. Hope you are enjoying some handheld gaming today. I know you're a big handheld gamer. Let's begin first by covering a little bit of like the baby news, the non-Switch baby news. Warhammer 2. So Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2 achieved 6 million player milestone. What were you saying, Silver, earlier about those numbers? Can you explain that again?
Yeah, I seem to recall that it got to 2.5 million in its first month.
Mm-hmm.
So that would mean they've had like 3.5 million in the 2 months since then.
Stop, Solar.
So it seems they've averaged like close, like 1.5 to 2 million a month since then.
Dude, I couldn't be happier for him. I could not be happier for that. It's like, oh, sorry, my dogs. We've got a delivery right at 10:30. I need to just I just need to put those guys outside. I think that it pays off for them to take World War Z and go to Space Marine 2. Seems like it all fits overall with their ideals and how they put it all together. It also helps that it was low bugs, right? I didn't have a ton of bugs. I don't know if you guys did when it first released.
It did. I think probably the holiday sale probably helped as well, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Ship a lot of units for them.
Yeah, I think time frame, there wasn't a ton at the same time, like competing in the same type of game, I think, at the time. And then, I don't know, Silver, if you think that a lot of people came from Helldivers too, because I know like some people were, going in and out of that game. Do you think there was maybe also an influx, because the games are a little bit similar, right, in structure?
I mean, there were definitely a contingent of people when Space Marine came out who said that Space Marine would kill Helldivers 2. There were some very, very local
and those were exaggerated.
Who insisted on that, yeah, and said that they would all move over to Space Marine 2. Like what I saw were people who like temporarily moved over to Space Marine 2 for a while, like me, and then moved back to Helldivers for the most part. Like that was largely my experience.
I would say mine was a mix between the two, as well as a good mix of people who just didn't play one or the other. There was they're a different feel, and that's okay. They look somewhat the same in the idea that they're both warriors killing bugs, but a lot of people like. I think it's 4 with
they play very
Helldivers.
differently.
They play different. The gambit system is different. The way you get better at each game feels distinctly different. So, I mean, we all like
certainly
games.
The feel is a lot more different than you would expect just looking at it on the surface.
Yeah, because on the surface, like they're both like horde co-op shooters.
Sure.
But yeah, they really do play very, very differently.
I mean, just even
like,
once you dive
really
in and move around.
In a lot of ways, Helldivers is closer to like a milsim game than it is a game like Space Marine 2, I would say.
Yeah, probably. Aries, what's up? What's up, James? Where's the dog cam? That'll come 10,000 subs. We'll get a dog cam. Dead Captain James says, damn, that's crazy. I don't get it. I played it, but found it really disappointing, and I regret my purchase. Jojo Hill says, what's up, what's up? What's up, Lucitan? He's also here. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like they all just feel like different games. I really haven't. I like Helldivers 2 a lot, but there's something about it that doesn't pull me back. Warhammer kept me for a more contained amount of time and deep in it with Johnny and those guys after the review. What's up, Sleeve? We were all having such a good time. And the thing, ignoring the Steam concurrent lists, the bullshit that's being talked about right now, we'll talk about that in a second. The amount that I got out of those games, well worth the money. Beyond belief worth the money.
Yes.
And still indicates a good game. Even if it went away tomorrow, I would still look back at those and go,
for sure.
We had some of the most fun times in our Discord and multiplayer, even with randoms. Johnny, we played with, did we play with Jor? Or did we play with Anti-Sky?
Oh, we played with Anti-Sky, Silver, Cyanide.
Silver.
Yeah. And a couple more people from Discord. Really good times.
Yeah, Cyanide, who refused to heal himself. So we had to remember that. We had such a good time in that. So, different style games. But hey, celebrating games right now for the early bits of news, because it's not all good news. Awesome for them. 6 million player milestone. Also means more of a chance of number 3, which, like, you're not going to get me to say that makes me unhappy. I also want to give a shout out to something. I can't believe I'm saying this. I mean, I legit can't believe it. This is not hyperbole. Dude, am I impressed. Man, am I impressed by the DLC characters for Mortal Kombat. I saw, I had not seen Ghostface, but they showed Conan. And as a Conan fan and learning his swordplay when I was a kid, because like that's what you watched and you had your stick in the backyard. They did such a good job delivering the feeling of Conan's moves. Everything from the hand on the extra bladed cover part and the hit with the back. It just...
So is it the Arnold version of Conan?
It's Arnold. And not only that, if that's a voice actor, that's an incredible voice actor. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say, from what I watched YouTube, watched it twice, it certainly sounded like him. But it was...
So we're going to get Gideon Nielsen as Red Sonja as well?
I don't know. But then that caused me to look at Ghostface. And here's the reason why I think these appeal to me. Not as a game, because I'm not going to go back and play Mortal Kombat, but they appeal to me from an artistic standpoint and why they deserve kudos. Both had so many callbacks and so many little Easter eggs to how they moved or to fans. I was quite surprised. Ghostface talks instead of with his voice. He uses the recorder thing. So his voice masker. And then there's multiple ghost faces that look different that show up because in the movies it's been different murderers. Just the way he stabs, the way he moves. He has the ability to go prone and climb like he's under a table to like slash somebody's legs. I mean, there's all these things I did not expect because I haven't seen Ghostface. And I know they're an older DLC, apparently. But, and then Conan's moves, even his fatality, which involves the cannibalism soup. from the movie was just like, I watched it and I was all, dude, that's primo, man. That's the kind of fan service I want in DLC characters. Sometimes I get the games that I really like and they get a DLC character that's like, this character really just looks like another dude with a different face, or
Yeah.
you know, some of their moves aren't in the game. This was one of those times where I was watching it just going, that's primo. That is fantastic stuff. I love that. And they've always been good. I think generally they've always been good. Anything else here that's that, you know, is good and positive we can talk about before we dive into some of the industry news, or anything you've been playing and loving or enjoying? We can also talk about your experience, Silver, with Dynasty Warriors Origins too, if you want.
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Citizen Sleeve says, apparently the voice actor for Conan is not Arnold. It's a person named Chris Cox. That is amazing, and that guy deserves every kudo. Also, Spetsu, PLN, $59.99. Thank you very much for the super chat. Okay, go ahead, Silver. I'm sorry. I'll shut up.
I've managed to play a little bit of Origins today. Dynasty Warriors Origins. I did not get into the early access. I didn't want to pay the extra $20 for it. So haven't been able to play it until today. I am a big Dynasty Warriors fan. I've played it pretty much, the games pretty much since Dynasty Warriors 2 and 3. 3 was the first one I played, and then I went back and played 2 back in the day. And I've been playing the series off and on, like both in their different iterations, both through Extreme Legends, through Empires, and through the sort of core editions of the games. Like everyone else, really disappointed with Dynasty Warriors 9 and the sort of offshoot they tried to make into making it an open world, which just didn't work at all with their execution of it. But I mean, Origins is another pretty unique take. It strips away a lot of what has sort of defined the series up until this point, but it also works in a lot of elements from other games like Empires, where it basically starts you off as an original character rather than one of the historical characters, and then sets you on a particular story campaign throughout. You don't get to choose characters, or you don't get to customize your character or create your character. Your character is set for you. You can name your character, but your character is basically given a moniker that other characters call you by, regardless of whatever you name them. So it doesn't really matter much. But I think that's done mostly for the sheer amount of pre-rendered cutscenes it allows them to do for introducing characters and story elements. And they take you through all the different historical battles that are going to be familiar to any longtime Dynasty Warriors fan. Combat has been reworked as well. Combat is actually, to me, so far, the best part of the game. It's probably the best I've seen in a Dynasty Warriors game so far. It feels a lot more precise in your controls. Parrying feels really, really satisfying. There's a new evade system, so you can actually dodge around, which, to my recollection, I've never been able to do in a Dynasty Warriors game before. So it makes you a lot more mobile around the battlefield. There are a lot of enemies on the screen. It's actually, in the larger battles, it's very, very easy to rack up 1,000 kills or more, where sometimes, even in the older games, that could be where you could actually have to go out and chase for that if you wanted to get those numbers. Here it happens pretty quickly, actually. At least it's done that for me. But yeah, it feels really satisfying difficulty wise as well. You can get punished very, very easily if you don't pay attention, and it can be very easy to get overwhelmed because you'll be fighting multiple enemies at a time very often, and they will. So your positioning is going to matter a whole lot for staying aware of where enemies are and what attacks they can pull at you. And there's also the usual Dynasty Warriors bullshit with archers and whatnot that are gonna hit you and annoy the hell out of you, and you're gonna have to find elements to counter them. There's also increased strategic aspects in the game where you can pull off like strategic maneuvers with your troops and use those to funnel into combos and whatnot. That's pretty fun to play around with, but I haven't gotten to explore that a whole lot yet. but I'm looking forward to delving more into that.
Graphically?
Graphically, it's the best looking Dynasty Warriors game so far, but that's not necessarily saying much.
Yeah.
It looks reasonably current, I would say. I think it's the first like Dynasty Warriors game we've actually had in like genuine 4K.
Oh, okay.
So that's something. Character models look pretty decent. But I mean, it's not going to blow anyone's minds. But there are a lot of enemies at screen at one time. I haven't had any performance issues on PC with the port at all so far. So knock on wood for that. It's also, if you're going to get it on PC, you're going to have to play with a gamepad. The keyboard implementation is not great. So you should definitely
explore keyboard
be willing
and
to
mouse.
accept that. If you're a keyboard and mouse player, either stay with console or stay with your gamepad.
Copy that. What about you, Johnny? What have you been playing and enjoying?
So what have I been playing? I kind of lost track there. I did try the first Berserker demo for a little bit, and then I was finishing House Flipper 2. I kind of did everything in that game, and been playing some League, and I think honestly that's about it. I did go back in. Oh yeah, I came back in to play some more Wukong. That was it.
Yeah,
that was the bit I was forgetting. I kind of went back and got through the boss that I was stuck at, and yeah, learned a bit more about the game and got a bit better at it and stuff, which we'll talk about. You were gonna talk about games we suck at, you know?
Yeah. That like I said, that turned into a discussion. I've been, there's some NDA games. I will just say, like January, it was interesting to talk to some other creators who randomly DM'd me about January. They were like, "Man, my January numbers are all weird. Like it's a weird time." And some people are new to YouTube but have done Twitch and that kind of stuff. YouTube is really weird right now, especially because I don't do like, I've got the top video lists I do, but I don't do a lot of the stuff right now. And so it can appear like I'm dead or not doing anything, but I can say that there's a lot of code out there because a lot of these games that were moved to February, March are done. So there's a lot of games we can't talk about. One we can talk about that we're playing is Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and the impressions there. And, I've given my impressions to the patrons. We do that, we do it a little bit early for them because we're in there every day. So we had a nice discussion about my impressions of that game. But I would say in a way, dude, Kingdom Come is such a weird game because it's an immersive sim at its heart, at its very heart, is that one of the most immersive sims you can get for medieval for sure, let alone just overall. But at the same time, people always have to be aware that not every immersive sim immerses the other characters in your systems. In fact, a lot of times, you are the only one immersively simming. And I think that with Kingdom Come Deliverance 1 and 2, once the hubbub goes away or went away with 1, that was one of the things we heard about a lot of times. That was one of the cumbersome elements that people ran into with Kingdom Come Deliverance 1, was that they were like, I have all these systems against me, but it doesn't necessarily feel like anybody else is doing it. And this is going to sound weird. It feels almost like a lit RPG or the animes that involve a character going to an MMO where they go in and they feel like they're the only one who knows. And that is there. That is something that I think will be an interesting discussion to have. Not saying it bad or good. I'm saying with immersive sims, the more you immerse it and the more they tell you these systems matter to the world, the more you try to see if the world is really that way or it's just you. And
the more you start to notice that,
the more you can notice those things. So that'll be that'll be a very interesting discussion around it. That's one of the things I took away from it when I was playing it, and just immersive sims as a whole, that I've always sort of noticed in games, how really you're you could call it almost immersive Henry instead of Kingdom Come, because it's not really the
Right.
kingdom. That stuff is doing its own thing on a system that really isn't the same way that you're doing things. And it's fascinating discovery, or not discovery, but it's fascinating discussion. Got to jump in. Performance wise, I can mimic what pretty much everybody said. Good performance. I can only talk about a certain particular area in these previews and in the impressions. Combat's pretty much the same. Some improvements have definitely been had. But if you were a person who was playing Kingdom Come, and this has already been brought up by the previous, if you're a person who's playing Kingdom Come and you bounced off that combat,
that's still there. That's the same bones.
Yeah, it's the same skeleton. Like, it might be a twin that's not identical, but it's close enough that you're like,
maybe the second one came out a little better than the first.
Yeah, maybe it's not Danny DeVito, Arnold Schwarzenegger better, but it's twins, but it's definitely like Arnold and his stuntman, where you're all, there's a lot that feels generally the same in the combat system that I think people need to look at and understand. That's just the system they've built and what they've wanted to do. And I've already, completed some of my stuff, but one of the things that it reminds me of, well, no, I'm not even gonna, I don't even want to say that. I'll wait for the review for that. But
okay,
it's when it comes to the stances and stuff, it's all there. It's the same stuff that people have dealt with before. Some fixes for quality of life, which are great. I think one of the biggest bonuses to this game is them deciding to utilize the same engine and not switch engines, because you sort of know what caveats you have. You sort of know how it's going to look generally, how it's going to perform, and then you're able to improve on that as the developer, which they have done. Definitely improvements in performance that were pretty stunning.
And for a game like this, by the way, like, stability is a big deal for me personally. When I play a really big RPG of this kind, it really grates on me if there are consistent, like, graphical glitches or things that are pulling me out of the experience. And that was definitely the case, sadly, for me. Like, day one, Kingdom Come, the first game, definitely had quite a few of those.
Yeah, no, I get that. Especially if it's asking you to perform, a perfect parry or a perfect block.
That too.
And you got an FPS drop, and you're like, listen, pretty difficult to do that. Or it stutters during the delivery of some speech that you're listening to, and you need to, you're asked a narrative question where you need to respond, and you're like, dude, I didn't hear half of what this guy was saying because there were some stutters or some glitches. So, yeah, it is a game that I think people who have played the original will feel ultimately feels very familiar but improved. And with some issues, there's definitely going to be some stuff there around the story, around just the gameplay itself. But it doesn't go out there to change. It doesn't, it's not out there to be like, hey, look at us, we're changing absolutely everything, which is exactly the way I think it should be. It's not always the way it is. I feel like sometimes these sequels go out to change too much. This one is definitely not one of those. This one is definitely not of the old, we're going to change too much kind of thing. It's like, we're going to, it is a story, a continuation. That'll be the other thing, is the continuation. How does it handle onboarding of new people? JR7247 says, is a save system friendly for busy old guys with shorter gaming sessions? It is. There's some changes there, which I will discuss during the review. It is more friendly. Because
the first one, you had to drink the schnapps, right?
Or sleep.
Okay. Yeah.
There's some tweaks there.
Cool.
But I will say, I've always liked Henry. I thought he was a fun character. I think that sort of continues here. There's a humor in that, so that you are mired in shit and blood and dirt sometimes. And you look goofy when you're talking to somebody and you're covered in another.
And you're literally a pleb, right? So it's pretty relatable. Like, you were.
In the first one.
Really,
in this one, in this one, you aren't. But we'll talk about that in the review too.
That's cool.
I can definitely see a Mass Effect 2, not Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 2 went nuts with its revisioning, but there's definitely, you're still not top of the pile. But I will say that what I did like is there's a sort of a feeling of power Henry Henry has right away, and this doesn't come from familiarity of the game. This comes directly from the game itself, even to newcomers, where you're able to fight a little bit better. I will say that. There's some improvements there that you're like, okay, this feels smoother for people who, let's say, this is their first jaunt into the immersive sim kind of, Henry simulator, which this is. Yeah, there's some funny stuff too. I definitely think their ability to write from an idiot standpoint. I mean, Henry's not an idiot, but he is sort of an idiot. He's definitely got social faux pas. He's got he's got his bravery is like stupid bravery, if you get my drift, and that
Right.
pops up. I think it does really well. I think he's a pretty enjoyable hero too. People talk about spoken voiced heroes, whether they like them or not. I've never found myself disliking that character. I didn't in the first one and don't in this one. And I think that that's actually pretty cool, because sometimes you'll be playing a game and, you're
Yeah.
like, these
Why am I a
decisions,
dick?
these decisions
what?
don't work for me, that kind of stuff. So, yeah,
I also think that I respect the original game for taking its time and embracing the slow pace of everything. Going to locations was slow, but made sense. And then the quests, there was a lot of talking. And especially now with the like TikTok age, where people's attention span is really short, I'm interested to see like how popular it's going to be. We did see Baldur's Gate do really well, even though
Right.
it had all this like attention you need to pay and all this dialogue and everything. So I was encouraged by humanity's ability to pay attention to that game. I hope we see that thing again in this one, because it looks like they stuck to their guns in terms of the pace. They have their pace of the game. I don't think they've accelerated too much necessarily based on what I've seen. Would you say that's fair or no?
I would say it's fair, except for there's one huge difference between Baldur's Gate and Kingdom Come that can't be denied. There's two. One, the distance traveled feels magnificently larger in Kingdom Come, and the blank spaces are massive. Where Baldur's Gate likes to shine with that bit of magic and the fantasy folklore kind of thing, so it's interesting around every turn, even if it's not. It doesn't matter if there's not a troll over there. It's because you're in a bioluminescent forest made of mushrooms and talking trees. It's pretty interesting all by itself, right? That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Where Henry is like, these are weeds and dirt.
Yeah.
And this is more weeds,
empty field,
and dirt.
Yeah.
And a creek I can't go across if I'm wearing my heavy armor. So
And there aren't trolls in the forest, just humans.
And there might be somebody pretending to be a troll or something, right? Yeah. So I think that also buying and then buying into and beating are, we've talked about it since day one for the last 8 years, that it doesn't all equal the same thing. I could see a lot of people getting this and, just like the first one, enjoying their time running around, and then maybe they'll just walk away from it. Maybe it'll have a high completion rate. I don't know. But I think with a first-person immersive sim, their high completion rates are fairly low. I think when you look at just the people who've reported it, even within our friends groups, usually it's more about that atmosphere, and then you almost dive in too deep. And then by the time you're done diving in too deep, you're sort of burned out because you've spent so much time doing every little thing that you're like, I've got my fun out of this. So it'd be very interesting to see how that goes. But yeah, it's coming out soon. It's amazing to see these games early reviews. Really nice. I think a lot of people are very smart because they're looking at the time frame for these, and they're like, we better get the code out. So they announced that they were doing code like 4 weeks early, and it's been really nice to be able to just jump in there and maybe do another side video other than just the review by the time it's ready. So that's a lot of what I can say about Kingdom Come. But there, if you guys have questions, feel free to pop them off. And next up, let's talk about Switch 2. So,
finally,
dude, I got to shrink this video so it doesn't cover up Johnny. Yeah, so Switch 2 got announced, and announced is such a unbelievably overused word here in this, because it really wasn't. It was just like, here's a trailer, very short, shows us the size of the system, shows us the form factor of the system, showed one game for a brief, just momentary, little bit of time. But we do see that the system is a good deal larger, so that's a massive bonus to me. Not
Yeah.
only are the Joy-Cons taller,
The Joy-Cons too. Yeah, nice.
And also when we look at the screen, it's going to be larger, which all rumors panned out. All of the rumors have really panned out. Also, the Joy-Cons look to either be pointers as well as mice, or mice sliding some kind of movement, solution that's going on there, which is hyper exciting. The infrared seems to be gone. There's a top and bottom USB-C. It's backwards compatible, as we know. And then those magnetic Joy-Cons, which we were joking about last night, if they're magnetic, is Nintendo going to sell you a lightsaber attachment where you click it, you take your right Joy-Con off and you click it onto some stick they sell you to play Beat Saber? I don't know. But I mean, there's all kinds of... The magnetic really does help. I think that's actually a pretty big boon to it. But then I saw it and I was like, okay, this is every rumor that we've seen all panned out, pretty much exactly what we saw. And I one of my first DMs was somebody was like, oh my God, it's just a Switch 2. And I was like, well, yeah. I mean, I feel like Nintendo sees that there's competition in the space and arbitrarily completely changing their design. Really, there's no real reason to. And instead, they're just going for that competitive space and delivering Nintendo's taste to that competitive space. But I wanted to know what you guys think. Like, any surprises? Did you want anything else? Was there, I know we want more data, but go ahead, Johnny. Is there anything?
Dude, first of all, I think I'm really impressionable with like 3D animations, because I was like, dude, that looks cool, and they got the clicks and everything. I was into it, but
Switch 2.
Yeah.
Click.
Yeah, I admit, like, they had me easy with that one. But yeah, I think we do see a little bit of a change. It's all black, right? It's a little bit less Nintendo-y in a sense, a bit closer to what we see maybe with the Steam Deck or others, which is more like more of a serious, type hardware style. Yeah, I think it's just an iteration, pretty much. And like you said, pretty much what we expected. I'd like to see the Joy-Cons be bigger. That might help a lot of us be able to play with the original ones. Overall, I think it's really cool, man. I did look at the fine print where they said that it was compatible with Switch games.
Mm-hmm.
And they did say not every game might be supported.
Yeah.
So we might see some games that don't work.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
We'll have
to see like Amiibo, how many.
If those are gone, those right there are
right. Well, I got worried, like, are some third-party games not gonna work? Or maybe, I don't know. I got a bit worried looking at that. But
I see.
Maybe I'm overthinking it.
I think you are overthinking it. I think for the most part, they already stated at their financial event that the next system would be backwards compatible fully in all of its ways. I think that what we're looking at is them covering their bases with things like Labo, because it
just
won't
in
fit
case,
Labo.
If you have the exception,
the wrong size. Yeah. So there's some things it can't actually physically do right away the moment they change.
But it's got the cartridge, right? So same thing. So it will support your physical games and everything. They didn't state about save games. I know we talked about it here, I think, last week, but I'm assuming you'll be able to transfer your saves.
I would be.
Otherwise, it would be ridiculous.
Yeah. Is that it? You want to pass it to Silver, or do you have more on it?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, go ahead, Silver.
I mean, I'm not enthused by the larger size, I have to admit. It kind of makes me go, well, what's the point of the Switch then? At that point. Like, the first one is already barely portable for me.
Mm-hmm.
So making it even larger just makes it obsolete in its undocked state for me, really.
Right.
And when it's just a docked console, well, then the point of the Switch is kind of sort of missed for me. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that. But other than that, yeah, I mean, better the idea of playing Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom at a higher, more stable frame rate certainly is appealing. Outside of the PC area, but I'm not super excited. I don't really see a great need to sort of move on from the Switch at this point, and move on to the Switch 2 for me.
Well, weirdly enough, I think that's the big discussion is the move because price is going to be a huge factor. And
Yeah.
like what 6-8 months ago, I had stated I had heard it was 450. I'm just going to stick with the 450. That's what I've been hearing was 450. So if we look at 450, that was in June or well, February was where I'd heard people like bouncing around 450 seemed really like that seems to be locked in for them. They want to make money per console, I'm assuming, and then you have your Switch 1 originally selling, right? So you have to figure out where you price the Switch 1. Do you drop it? You can't price the Switch 2 too low because consumer psychology is a thing that there is no jury out on that. Like jury's done on that. You do have to price it at a point to where it feels technologically like an advantage. Otherwise, people do start wondering about the abilities of it, regardless if I think the abilities are worth whatever money. So I think price is going to be a big deal to decide, yeah, the upgrades and then what it does with the backwards compatibility. I mean, if it is, let's say it doesn't improve FPS on some of these games and it just improves resolution, that's great. That's great. You know, playing Xenoblade Chronicles at above emo cutter resolution would be great because that game is rough. Playing Tears of the Kingdom at above its normal resolution would be great. But I think most people would want those older games to hit 60 and
Oh, for sure.
add some anti-aliasing on top, add some upscaling on top. And for the most part, I think when you look at these systems, especially a console, which is different than pretty much anything else out there, we want that.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree with you on the portability because you and I have joked about the portability. So I have one of these devices that's that size plus bigger ones. So does Johnny. We've had the bigger tablets. We've had controllers that go on the sides of the bigger tablets. We've been able to play with these. There's a reason why they made a big deal of the fucking flipboard on the back, the tray, the stand. And I was joking with the guys in Discord going, that first thing I'm going to figure out is how to snip that goddamn thing off because I always have to stand halfway come home.
Can you imagine like the ergonomics of sitting there hunched over it? Like,
yeah, that's what I said too. That's what I said too. I was like, 8.8 isn't big enough or 8 isn't big enough for me to still feel comfortable. I don't with the Legion. I've got bigger handhelds. I think 10 is where that becomes more tenable, where putting it up in front of you. So we'll just have to see how that works. But I would agree, there's definitely some thought processes because this kind of gaming right here isn't comfortable.
No.
Yeah.
To me. And then when you start putting it out farther, you're like, well, why am I not just holding it anyway? You know, I
think they picture like
you got to figure it out.
Maybe with a friend, you're sitting at a table and each one has one Joy-Con and you're playing like Mario Kart or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Could be, but you're still going to be like this.
Work. You're still yeah.
Like here's you and I playing Mario Kart on that thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it as a handheld is what I'm going to play it as. I'll review it docked, but
also at that point, if you're at home, why don't you just hook it up to the dock station and play Mario Party from the television instead of the Switch 2 screen on a table?
Yeah, if you're at home. Yeah. I mean, it is definitely a catch-all device. What do people think in chat? What do you think the price will be? I really do. I'm sticking at $450. I don't know if they do pack-ins. We had talked about this before. I still think the pack-in is a deal that I would love to see come back for all these systems. I would just love to see many more pack-ins where you don't really get a big raise in the price, but you get a game or two. You know, I can see a pack-in at $450 or maybe $500. $500 is insanely high, but they do like to make their money from their systems. They like to make their money day one, and it feeds directly back into their developers. That's the difference is a lot of consoles, as they sell, they're losing money with each sale. And that is sort of a weird situation, right? Where like you're losing money so that you have to sort of, you want it to do well, but at the same time you're like, this sucks because it's doing well. You're losing money on it and you're hoping the games make that up. Nintendo's been pretty smart usually where they're making a bit of money from each one, so it's feeding back in. So it's just all positive in that way, which I like, even if it's a small amount. King says, as Silver mentioned, the only reason to upgrade for me is to play the two open world Zelda games with better frame rate, hopefully resolution. The additional cost wouldn't justify it. Yeah. I can't see them putting the price too high because they might make ungodly amounts of money through their storefront. Yeah, they don't. So this is Nintendo. I think the one thing I want to point out is Nintendo has never been a tit for tat company ever. They make money everywhere. They don't say we're making money on the storefront, therefore, if they did, we would get sales on their games, which we don't. That is not how Nintendo works. That's why I think $450, if you look at the other systems, $429, somebody said, I could see that. If you look at the other systems, it sort of makes sense. Also, guys, this is going into huge territory. It is going into a contested environment. This is the first time ever where I mean, they are contested as shit. I'm not saying these handhelds have been doing gangbusters. People talk about them like they are. But when you really look at them, they're not like selling out the world. But at the same time, those are people that if they've already bought one of those, or as Silver said, if they're looking at the size of it and they're seeing these other devices that do Windows or do OS and they like that Steam OS and they just want a Steam Deck, there's a lot of options.
That's also the thing I think that's so difficult to judge with the Switch 2, right? Because on the one hand, it is heading into a market that's getting increasingly crowded, and on the other hand, it kind of isn't, because it's still sort of uniquely its own as this hybrid with the Switch function of hooking it up to your TV that you don't get from a lot of the other.
No,
tablets,
all the other ones do. Yeah. All of them.
Do they have a docking station? Like, okay,
you can either buy, just like with the Switch, you can buy them, or you just use USB-C cable, and they all plug in to HDMI. Yeah. Okay. So it's actually, that's in fact, if it wasn't, that is where I would agree with you and say that's where the competition.
And you can hook up like a gamepad with a USB or something. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. In fact, you could say, Silver, in a way, with the double USB-Cs on this, they're copying the Lenovo Legion and such, where they've also gone to the two, one below, one above. The one below is usually your HDMI connector / power. One above, USB extender, controller, USB, or just do Bluetooth directly from the system, that kind of thing. So yeah, they all pretty much do that now. But your other point of that, they are still unique. It is still Nintendo.
Yeah.
Like, that is there's no denying that.
I mean, the brand recognition is definitely there.
That's the other thing. Since last year, because I still have heard multiple people stating that there were plans for a last year release, or there was plans for at least an announcement last year, all this kind of stuff. Companies have been chomping at the bit enough that, like, I think some mistakes have been made even on announcements where, like, PR emails have gone out that have seemed to indicate Switch 2, maybe not naming it perfectly, but companies have been itching to announce certain games coming either day and date with new titles being announced, or titles currently worked on that aren't out that they want to say are now, coming to Switch 2, as well as older ones, including Ubisoft. And we're looking at the financial announcements right now that have been coming out in the last couple of weeks from all the big companies because of the taxes and when they do their stockholder announcements. Some, I think, were really chomping at the bit to get an announcement even earlier, because there are people who were like, yes, we would love to say we have a third console to release on. It is a big deal, especially with the current environment where console gaming is, which is not in the greatest place. I don't know if you guys saw, but PC gaming and PC game sales are beating out console. So that's pretty crazy when you look at it. The market segment financial analysts have been doing breakdowns of some of the patterns. Consoles definitely stagnated. Certainly UK, I think Johnny and I talked about this last week. UK sales, physical sales for console have cratered. So there's this place where a Switch could really help be another place to sell your game, whether it be brand new or old.
And then
Expect to see it.
And we remember 20 years ago, right, when the narrative was exclusively PC is dead.
Every 7 or 8 years, something is dead, right? A genre for a system, a company, an OS. Okay, maybe not OSs; those do die. Thank God, Vista. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, things definitely get announced as dying a little early. I don't think consoles will ever die. I think consoles, though.
No, I don't think so either. For sure.
It used to be where Intel and AMD or what have you would release these systems in desktops, and they would be at a price that the point was so different that there wasn't as much of a gray area as there are now with handhelds. Handhelds are PCs. I mean, the number of people I know who use a handheld PC as their PC and then pick it up, walk off, and play games with it is getting higher by the day. Or they go on a business trip and don't want to carry a laptop, so they carry a Legion and they plug the damn thing in to the TV, mouse and keyboard, and they use Windows right from there. And you're like, okay, things are changing. So yeah, stuff's getting mixed up. Form factor look great, guys. Battery, we have to look for OLED. I think the battery, I would love to see it play older games more efficiently, maybe. So maybe we get a little bit more battery life out of it. It certainly doesn't seem like it's insanely powerful. So my hope is that its current battery life for new games is, about what we get with the old Switch right now. What do you guys get for your? Either one of you guys play your Switch much anymore? Your Switch 1?
Not enough
really,
to test
sadly.
the battery.
Yeah, darn it. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody in chat, how long do you get on your battery? I think that's the big thing is like how we figure that out.
Yeah.
And I mean, especially also playing it undocked. When I do play it, it's even less.
Is it even less for you? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's as King says, the competitive advantage for Switch would primarily come from Nintendo game libraries. And that's the thing, is how much of a library do they offer? This is definitely the most contested ever. And we're in a time when gaming spending is retracting everywhere. So we're also seeing just this unique situation where gamers are waiting, where Nintendo's not known for sales. People are like, well, you can't wait for a Nintendo game. We'll have to see if maybe that'll switch, and maybe that'll switch. Maybe that'll switch too. See, I guided through. Maybe that'll switch too. And we'll get some sales from Nintendo, but it's definitely becoming a really
it's a totally different landscape, isn't it, for the market?
Different. Yeah.
Because if you're someone, I could see like both sides. If you're someone who just likes to play Wii Sports and you want like a super user-friendly Nintendo-y thing, that's the only thing that will do it for you, right? No other system.
Yeah, it won't even speak to you. Another system won't speak to you. Yeah.
You won't even look at it. Like if you're that type of person, you're not looking at buying a Legion or, like messing with Windows.
Exactly.
So that's fine. We know that market is sort of locked in for them. I'm thinking about the other people, the people who would buy a portable system to play third-party games.
Yeah.
Are they not, like, if this comes out, would they be more attracted to a Switch 2 instead of some of the other stuff that's around, like Legion or whatever it may be?
I can tell you I'm attracted to that idea, even though I have all the handhelds. There is something about playing a Switch and somebody says Division 2 is on the Switch. But here's the biggest problem with all this. Division of game segmented groups in those games. Game saves, cross-game saves, cross-play. If Nintendo or whomever closes off those systems continually, like they did with the last one, where they couldn't figure out what the fucking internet was, if we get that kind of system, Johnny, that's going to be pretty detrimental to everybody, because then it is just a additional purchase with no
and disconnected.
real
it's in disconnected. A vacuum, like
yeah. So that's where I'm hoping that these companies have been saying, hey, we got to figure out a way so that, and we've seen it before. There are some games that do that. It's just rare. I would like to see most of them do that, where you can just say, You know, if you're playing this game, Ubisoft likes to separate regardless, and they need to stop. And it sounds like as we move forward, they will. But a lot of other companies do it too. I would like to see, you know, if you're on this system, you can play at the very least with people from others. You know, if you're worried about competitive for whatever reason, mouse and keyboard, whatever, you can do that. But I mean, the ability to jump in on the Switch to third-party games that are releasing day and date on the Switch too with PlayStation and Xbox, I think grabs the Nintendo fans who have always felt a little disturbed by how little that happens.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we sat in here and most people say they have a Switch and? I mean, I would say it's 99% of owners are like, I have a Switch and it's not because they need it. It's because they want to play a good number of games with other people that just aren't available on that system. So yeah. Yeah, so price.
You know, the ones who only have a Switch, in my experience, are mainly just families who keep it for the kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we can't over explain the amazing bits of a console OS that just works too. As Johnny said, if somebody wants to get in, doesn't want to mess with any Steam OS stuff, just wants to go into Nintendo and hit start, there is a positive to that.
I think it's going to be really interesting to see just how contested the market is now, because I think it can be it can be easy to maybe overestimate it. I'm a little wary of it just because of the history with Nintendo and like the market share in Japan. Certainly, I don't see their market share in Japan being threatened. I think that's going to be huge for them still with the Switch 2. I would assume. And I mean, we've had contested handheld markets before where Nintendo has still carved out like a sizable piece of the market for themselves due to the market share. So it's going to be interesting, certainly for me, to see how much of that still holds true, given everything that's happened, given how the market has evolved over the last couple of years. But I would be careful about, like, for me personally, I don't want to make any assumptions about anything because I mean, Nintendo has sort of carried that through over the past like 20 years in that market. Like, we had a period of 10 years where they basically had a monopoly for a reason because nobody else were really able to like compete with them in that arena effectively.
Yeah, and even when Nintendo wasn't doing well with like the Wii U, or didn't hit the right people with the Wii U, it still has those diehard fans. Now, I don't know if
and at that point they still had the DS and the 3DS.
Yeah,
next to the Wii U.
I will say at one point here we're looking at multiple companies realizing that the same old patterns aren't working, and we'll have to see if Nintendo has realized that. Personally, I actually feel like they have. I feel like, for example, the Switch 2's form factor to me indicates they are thinking, they are looking and going, we don't want to switch everything up, and we don't want to add shit that is more experimental. And they've made that pretty clear. The Switch 2 was going to be iterative. It was going to be exactly what we're playing, you know, an increase in the current thing. Backwards compatibility is a big bonus because some have had them, some haven't. So there's all positives there. When we're talking about upscaling everybody, yes, they do have upscaling in it, and they also had the patent that we saw, which is separate from DLSS, which is their own upscaling. Expect to see companies not only have their own upscaling, but most likely we'll get more information on exactly what thing they're using, what they're going to call it, how they're going to handle it. It'll be interesting to see how upscaling's handled, because we do see there's different types of scaling that you can use, and I think people get very locked into it's got to be DLSS or FSR, especially with NVIDIA. It's got to be DLSS. And it's like, okay.
And it's also different, right, for the size, because when you're dealing with smaller resolutions, the type of like super sampling you can do, I think it's probably different, right? At least like I've heard you guys talk about how if your base resolution that you're super sampling from, if that's correctly said, if it's like high enough, then you sort of like have more information to work with.
Yeah.
And then when you start going to lower resolutions, maybe that's trickier.
Yeah,
or you have to do it differently.
but it's a lower resolution screen and a smaller screen, so you get away with stuff too. But what I
It
was gonna
looks
say
sharper.
was with FSR and DLSS, people get locked into those terms and they don't realize that not only is there XESS, I'm not saying they'll use that because that's Intel, but we've seen lossless scale and other software uh, utilities and software situations that have worked, and we've even seen other companies looking at those and going, there are other ways to do this internally in engine. Upscaling isn't brand new. So the idea that upscaling will be locked to a specific form factor that we're accustomed to, I think people should probably look at the future and identify that the DLSS FSR framework that we have, there are other things and other ways that companies can do it, including in engine and so forth, that can still get, especially at this resolution, when you're talking down into the 1080p, which is probably what it's aiming for. You go 900p, 720p, you upscale. There's some certain things you can do. I don't really like the idea of on a handheld, you can get away with more. You really can. I've seen some handhelds with pretty low that have been upscaled on Windows and been like, wow, that doesn't look half bad. But we're now seeing all kinds of software stuff. You've got browsers that are running different versions of super sampling or sampling upscaling, that are there. You've got all kinds of software. Magpie is another free. I think it's free. It came up around when lossless scale did, and Magpie was an executable. You could just double click and add some upscaling. So there's all kinds of situations that you can use, but I think that understanding Nintendo likes to do their own things. Nintendo aim is different. So I could see them aiming for something that is a very basic utilitarian way of making 1080p look good on their screen. Now, when you talk about out from the Switch to your systems, here is one thing that people need to absolutely remember. The majority of people who plug in their Switch have been reported to be into TVs that already have upscaling on them. And is it possible that Nintendo says, well, you've already got your own upscaling. We're not going to worry too much about cleaning up this picture, because some of these 4Ks upscaling and systems are profoundly better than they were 5-10 years ago. I mean, the new one I got is magnificent. I used to sell the damn things, and even I was like, damn, that is really good for taking a low resolution picture and making it playable. Do they save money that way, where they're like, we're not going to worry at all about on the output, we're not going to worry about any upscaling, we're just going to let the TVs handle it? I don't know. Make your resolution look good at 1080p. Therefore, when it's outputted into the TV and the TV handles it, it looks as good as it can. We don't know.
And
we don't know.
Dude, I would say that the prior TV I had for like 8 years until I changed it this year, it already made 1080p look pretty great.
Yeah.
At 50 inches or whatever, 47 inches, whatever it was. And that's pretty damn impressive for a TV that old. And it was like entry level LG.
Entry level upscaling back then. Yeah. Even now it's even better. Francisco, $5 super chat. What's up, sir? I'm more excited to see what Square's done with Final Fantasy VII to have it ready for Switch 2 with Steam Deck ready announcement yesterday to wow people. Yeah, just be aware, people are confused about the Steam Deck certification. Steam Deck certification is, I think, 4 bullet points that don't mean good. They literally mean like it's certified to run on Steam Deck. So you get those people who are like, oh man, that means it'll run good. And we continually, almost every game release, people are like, oh my God, it says it's certified. It's like, yeah, that means it'll boot. It means it has DirectX inputs. It means like it can translate the controller. But yeah, I want to see what Final Fantasy looks like on the PC. And Square has stated we're ready to be on everything. And it's gonna be weird to see Square return to the fold heavily, go back to Nintendo and see how that relationship works. Dead Captain says, I bet it's 540p with upscale and 1080. 540p would be a ridiculously low FPS. I would not assume 540p. You were talking about some really bad sampling at 540p that even great video cards can't handle, to 1080p looking great. I would be really surprised. I've tested 540 religiously. I would say that would be, unless they have some system. I know their patent has a pretty cool blocking system to it. that's pretty low. That's pretty low. But hey,
It's funny
we'll have
though.
to
The
see.
older Final Fantasy games are probably my most played games on the Switch at the moment.
At the Switch, yeah, dude, it's great to see.
Like Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy VIII.
Square went out there and said, hey, we're gonna be on everything, and that includes day and date for some of this stuff, which I think is just awesome. So we'll have to see how that goes. Flexing says being Steam verified just means it runs, doesn't mean good or good looking. Yeah, should definitely be reminded on that.
It is actually, I think, one of its greatest strengths. The Switch, its position as a platform for JRPGs is really, really solid for me.
Switch One.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Overall, I would say I'm pretty happy with it. That.
Doesn't really require that precise, a great deal of precision in terms of controls and whatnot. It's pretty forgiving. You can pause it and leave it and come back.
Yeah,
and,
right. You can do your old hiatus button, just walk away and come back.
I would say the Steam Deck is also pretty great for those.
I would assume so.
Yeah, those games also run great, and you can even use the trackpad for some of them, which is kind of cool. The trackpad is one of those things that looks super cool, and I love the feedback on it. But in practice, like, how many games do you actually play with that?
I think you saying like maybe cool one. Is perfect.
Yeah, kind of cool.
Kind of cool.
I mean, strategy games, I think, are the big ones that come to mind. Often,
I mean, I've tried it because I had it, and I had the Legion, which both have the bigger trackpads, and I gotta say, it just It's that middle ground, right? It's that middle ground. It just it always feels a little odd, and it probably always will, because it really is a different control. Your thumb isn't the same as a mouse, and then that's not the same.
Total War on the Steam Deck.
Total War on the Steam Deck, I played it on the Lenovo, so it's pretty much the same when it comes to overall controls, and I was pretty happy with it. I did use the touchpad for that because it handles the double. You can do double clicks. But here's what happens to me, Silver, every time. I have a big screen that's touch capacitive anyway, so I start just using the screen. And then I do a hybrid of like motion control, not motion, but touch control with that, with the sticks. And then it becomes cumbersome. And then I go to the mouse and I'm like, all right, whatever. I've even played it, Silver, with a wireless mouse, the Legion, and just been like this. Because I also like it close to me. And that worked strangely well, but at that point, then it's pretty small.
Yeah.
It's pretty small. I'll admit. You get that small screen at that point, you're trying to, see
the small units sometimes.
Yeah, you zoom out and you're like, that's either a Skaven, a Lizard Man, a really, like, tanned Barbarian, or Mud. It's one of those four. Yeah. Mr. Man, says 720p upscale to 1080p is pushing DLSS on small monitors. It could, depending on the sample rate. Yeah, for sure. Can Switch 2 run Crysis? Yes, it can. I think we've got to the point to where somebody could get Crysis run on the Switch. Running good at 60 FPS with identical features? No.
Still better than Pokemon Scarlet, though.
Probably 10 extra frames from Pokemon Scarlet. Can it run Pokemon Scarlet? Should be, or whatever that is. Is it Pokemon Scarlet that runs so terrible?
I'm trying to remember. I think actually was Shield. I think Shield and Sword were the really those were the decent ones, and then Scarlet was really bad.
Okay, Scarlet was really bad. Yeah. And then Love the Game says, I'm shocked they showed the Switch 2 without any game announcements. Well, they did show Mario Kart.
Right.
I mean, that was there.
But there wasn't
no
big
announcements. Yeah.
A big, like, hey, Zelda 3.
The question is also, is it a new Mario Kart or is it just Mario Kart 8?
See, that I don't know enough about Mario Karts to know, but I did see people questioning that. Beastie by Nature, $5 super chat. Can't wait to use Switch 2 to play my Game Pass games. It's about time to happen. Yeah, so that was the other question. Will Microsoft be there? Here's what I had heard and what we talked about last year. Microsoft was looking at Nintendo originally, if not Nintendo and Sony, to put the current games that are on Sony now and put all of them also on Switch 2 when it released. That I definitely expect. So any games that you see go somewhere else will most likely go to Switch 2. Game Pass, Listen, in their documents, the leaked documents, Microsoft had discussed courting Nintendo many times. They had talked about purchasing Nintendo in the other documents. They had talked about everybody, like I said last podcast, treat Mario or treat Nintendo. It is the Mario system. They treat it like that mistress. You know, they're dating somebody hot and heavy, maybe married, but there's some hot piece on the side. That's Switch 2. If it is possible that Microsoft announced their stuff because they knew that they had put together a preliminary deal and now everything's an Xbox, including your Nintendo Switch 2, which would be one weird day right there. Because we are also hearing rumors. I had heard some rumors that were sort of to the contrary of this, but now we're hearing other rumors that they're trying to improve cloud. Your cloud games do need to be improved if you want to put Game Pass Cloud on something, because I'm still not happy with Game Pass. But if you put, if somebody's able to jump on their Switch and, play Game Pass games, even if it's just your cloud games, that would be, we would be, dude, that's a weird.
Oh, yeah. I think it's a bit like, the hot girl back in high school, where she knows for sure that if she said one word, you would drop everything to go out with her.
Yep.
But the opposite is not true. And that's kind of how I view. I think Microsoft is like courting Nintendo, behind the scenes for the longest time and just waiting for them to say the word like, hey.
Yeah. And I definitely can say that other parties not related to them have stated that they've heard that they have developers have stated that they've definitely heard that pretty much every single company is looking at Nintendo, everyone, including all the ones that you would normally not associate with this kind of thing. So I think the biggest thing with Switch 2 is, Francisco, I'm excited, is it's a race now to the bottom to optimize games for lower hardware for portables. That's absolutely true. Yeah, with the more optimization we can get, the better. Lombardo says, may have already been asked, just showing up. Do you think Switch 2 will have increased performance on Switch 1 games? If we consider performance to be resolution as well as loading times or that kind of stuff, absolutely. Other than that, my assumption is it will be a very typical upgrade in res at minimum. Probably that. And then I don't know what the patches would need for those games or how that would be done. It's most likely a little bit like Microsoft was doing FPS boost, where they were able to figure it out by tricking the system into thinking it was basically, they tricked the system, which got them some extra FPS in some games. What I would see Nintendo doing, most likely, is something where it looks like it's unlocked megahertz-wise, because we've seen people with hacked Switches getting extra FPS on a hacked Switch. I could see something to that effect done by Nintendo. But Nintendo's going to worry about compatibility, I think. Nintendo's probably going to side on safety first. Does the game run? And then what do they do from there? This is, again, why I think their upscaling matters. Basic upscaling. Just get to 1080p no matter what. Always either upscale or output to 1080p, clean up the picture. Tito Diaz, $5 super chat. Can we get the Best Gaming Podcast coffee mug? I will make one and put it on, where do we do our store now? We do our store on, let me find it. I think it's Stream. Where do we do the store?
Fourth wall?
What'd you say?
Fourth wall?
No, we use, dude, it should be on the YouTube channel, I think, on the bottom of this video where we use it. I rarely pimp the store anymore. I'll check. But yeah, I can make one. Flexa says Nintendo has a history of just launching the games, bone stock, no improvements. Borderline running a Switch 1 and Switch 2 likely. Yeah, I think that they will absolutely go with compatibility first and safety first. I can see the former docked mode being used for backwards compatible games. Very interesting discussion there. So you trick prior mobile game, you trick prior Nintendo 1 games into thinking it's docked. So you get a little extra megahertz out of it. Damn.
Do you think we're gonna see like Switch 2 enhanced titles? So like games that have been tuned up to run better, kind of like we do with PS5 Pro and stuff?
Okay, ask that again.
So you know how in PS5 Pro we have Pro versions for
Right.
games, like so that the game can perform better in the Pro console.
Right.
So you get like specifically developed versions by the devs for that new system. So do you think like Switch 2 will come up with new versions for some games?
It won't be Nintendo patching them. It'll be those third parties. So it really depends on the third party, I think. If it requires a patch, that's why I was saying some of it seems like it would be smart to just do it hardware-wise, automatically work.
We could see it. The reason I was asking was about, I'm thinking about like first-party titles from Nintendo or from some of their like in-house developers and stuff.
Yeah, wouldn't it be... See, that's the thing everybody's talking about in chat, and what you guys have talked about is like Nintendo doesn't... They don't futz around usually with that kind of stuff. And yet, it's a different environment they're going into. This is a different gaming world. Even if you remove competition, you look at spending, totally different than it was before. If you add competition to it, it's totally different. If you add spending or remove that and pretend we were spending at high amounts, you still have competition. And those are just two. Then you have all the games. Then you have free-to-play. And free-to-play and older games are eating up a shit ton of the purchased games allotment of time. So there's like 4 or 5 competing things that Nintendo has just never had to enter, nor has Sony, and nor has Microsoft. And so, you know, hopefully they're looking. They should, right? We would want them to deliver the best thing. Not be like, because I've seen people say, oh, well, it's Nintendo to be good enough if it's just this. And my personal opinion is we're getting away from the good enough. That people are starting to look at good enough as being 4 or 5 devices versus 1.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
I could see, by the way, like them charging a premium. Remember how they did with PS5 when they would charge you like $10 extra for the PS5 upgrade version compared to the PS4? So I could see that actually... You know, from Nintendo, like, hey,
I feel like canceling the podcast so that Nintendo doesn't hear that.
I mean, that's,
you got to match the full price now.
Pretty much, Nintendo pretty much done that from day one.
Did they? I don't remember any patch performance.
It used to be called the Nintendo tax. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
They what? For Nintendo, they would charge somebody for a patch?
Yeah, like going all the way back to like the Super Nintendo and the NES systems. Like games back then were hella expensive, man.
Oh, I think we're talking about something different. We are talking about something different. He was saying, like, currently PlayStation, you have your PlayStation 4, and if you want the newer version, you pay for the patch
and
to get the newer version.
It's more expensive for the PS5 than it was for the PS4, like the $10. Yeah.
Right, but like, not only that, Silver, I'm saying if you own the game in the PS4, for you to get the PS5 version, sometimes you had to pay like to pay like $10.
I did not know Nintendo's ever done that. Go ahead.
Right.
Sorry.
So I'm thinking for the Switch, hey, if I own, for example, Tears of the Kingdom, and I want to play the Switch 2 version of that game, maybe I have to pay $10-15.
I don't like
that. I would assume that if you're transitioning to the Switch 2 version rather than play the Switch 1 version on the Switch 2.
Right.
Like I doubt there would be a fee to play the Switch 1 version on the Switch 2. The fee would be to play the
that Switch is 2, one thing,
to upgrade your Switch 1 version to the Switch 2
I think
version.
and I mean that would piss a lot of people off if you plug in your Switch 1 game into Switch 2 and suddenly it just plays like the Switch 1 unless you pay $10. I don't know, man. I don't know. Like that's not what I even want to put out into the world. Yeah.
Remember when Xbox talked about, was it Smart Play or Smart something? A system that automatically picks the latest version of the game. So if you were playing on, let's say, the latest Xbox, right? The most powerful, it would just pick the right version.
It picks the right version.
Yes. Yeah. Smart something. Yeah. And I remember people making fun of that, like saying, dude, that's a trivial feature. That's obvious. And meanwhile, like nobody else is doing it in the competition. Like Sony didn't do it. They made you pay for the newest version. And even when you did, sometimes you would accidentally select the old version, and there was nothing smart about it.
Johnny,
and now we're talking
Ray,
about maybe the same thing.
Jay said it's smart delivery.
Smart delivery. There you go.
Yeah. Well, the same thing with with whatever you call it, quick resume. I didn't think that was going to be useful, and I teased it. I don't use it as much as you guys do, but I've definitely been in chat and used it occasionally myself, where I did have 2 or 3 games and pop into another one and having it instantly come up is like, okay, that is quite nice. That is.
Yeah.
But it's quite nice at the peripheral for me. Sort of out there on the edge case for me personally. Lombardo says, I don't think Nintendo is going to put any extra development on Switch 1 games. If anything, they'll release a Switch 2 remaster.
Could be. Yeah.
Yeah. Could be. I don't.
$69.99.
Yeah.
I mean,
make sure to thumbs up the podcast while you're here, people. Go ahead. What were we going to say?
So the one thing I'll give Nintendo is I don't really think they have a history of monetizing remasters to the extent a lot of other large publishers do.
You mean they do lower price?
They have released remasters intermittently, but when you compare it to the potential of their market, I'm looking at a lot of remasters we haven't seen on the Switch, for instance, like Wind Waker, for some reason still hasn't popped up there. And they have spoken out publicly against the idea of monetizing their older library because they don't want it to cannibalize the newer games that are out, that was one of the reasons they gave for how they chose to implement the backwards compatibility with the Nintendo Online thing for the older NES and SNES games.
Right.
So I think compared to how they had allowed you to buy them on older systems like the 3DS and DS. But so I don't necessarily see Nintendo monetizing remasters to the same extent that we've seen with say Sony.
Right. Ubisoft.
Or Ubisoft, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a weird one, man. That's for sure. It's exciting times. I'm super excited to see what they end up doing. I would have liked to have had more information. I do feel like we were sort of, sent a video. It's like, welcome, here's a video, and that's it. And the rest of it, you're just going to have to guess on your own, which sort of sucks, especially for us who are actually interested in the system versus those who aren't. The other thing I want to talk about, though, is if you look at the system, top and bottom USB-C, that's cool and everything. But I was actually more interested in the fact that people were asking about day and date, and they were saying they didn't think day and date games would work. But this new system doesn't have the memory segmentation issue that the Series S has. So if you really look at, even though there's a slight teraflop issue between the two, you look at a Series S game and you generalize that, okay, if it works on the Series S, it'll work most likely on the Switch. To me, that grandfathers in the majority of games, like a good majority of games. We will have to see, though, if some of the games, I'm sure somebody knows where I'm going with this, but if some of the games that have had issues do come, for example, Baldur's Gate 3, does a Baldur's Gate 3 come out on the Switch too? Does Larian throw that on there? Do they port it out? Now, just bear with me. GTA 6. They stated they are getting Series S to run GTA 6. Nintendo is announcing in April. May, June. I'm literally just randomly talking here. It would be one of the most hilarious, crazy moments in gaming if that system comes out anywhere near GTA and runs GTA 6 at the same time. I think that would be absolutely nuts. Now, I'm not saying it can. I'm just saying if you look at the hardware that they are delivering and the general power and the idea that it'll be on a 1080 screen, I don't know what it would look like even. I'm literally just talking here about how hilariously weird the world would be if the places to play it would include a Switch 2. That would be weird as shit. And also, they usually don't wait longer than 3 to 4 months after announcements for their systems to be released. So April's their event. May, June, July even is still close enough to GTA to indicate that Nintendo's not worried about releasing against the biggest game of all time right now coming out. It would just be funny if they were like, the reason why we're not worried is all of our games that you can play that we've already told you about is going to be +1, and that +1 is GTA 6 day one. I'm just saying. I'm literally just saying that would be nuts. Spec Ops, $20 super chat. What's up, sir? Yeah, I think I DM'd you a couple days ago to check on you. He says, no games lately, too much work and been sick, but wanted to show some support. Thank you very much. I hope you are doing well.
Much appreciated.
Sucks about being sick. I hope you're doing well, though. Always appreciate you jumping in and telling us fun stories about your life. So hope to see you soon again. But anyway, yeah, I don't know.
Maybe they're waiting for the triple dip. So you have like PS5 originally, and then it comes out on PC, and then later on the Switch, like 3 years later or something.
I mean, yeah, true. But I mean, I just think it would be hilarious. I would love to see it. I would love to see a world where GTA was release day and date. Yeah, any GTA, but one of their games be release day and date on the Switch, and just have people go, what now? Like, what's happening? Because, you can figure out the Switch's power by taking a low power GPU and, and adjusting its megahertz and stuff. It would just be funny as shit. It would probably look, speaking of 540p, it would probably be down there in the 480p, 360p, upscaled, look like dumb.
Struggling. Yeah,
it looks so bad. Let's see. Lombardo says Series S will render GTA 6 at 144p, upscaled to 4K with cinematic 24. There you go. Yeah. GTA on Switch 2 release date would be a slaughter for Xbox and PlayStation. Switch 2 connects to your PC. Been trying to tell you guys for a month. I know a developer that spilled the beans. If everybody knew a developer and everybody's uncle worked at Nintendo would just have a division called Uncles. But I do know that he said that a couple times. I don't really know if I care that it connects to my PC, but I mean, I would rather have it just run its games really well and go from there. But when it comes to GTA, hey, I'm just talking my ass. I just think it'd be funny as hell, but probably won't happen. GTA is going to be what, a year? How long do they delay console to PC GTA titles? Is that a year or is it 2?
It's been a year.
Has it only been 1 year?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a year for GTA 5.
Okay. All right.
And for Red Dead 2.
Red Dead 2 was only a year?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. I don't see it happening. I just think that would be hilarious. Nothing else with Switch 2 that I can think of. Looks exciting. We'll have to see. Battery life got to be good. Backwards compatibility would be great if it was above and beyond. Larger screen is nothing but a positive. And I absolutely agree that the bigger Joy-Cons to me is one of the best parts, because it's just going to be more comfortable for me personally. And like, that matters. Speaking of moving on to something that matters, and we're going to talk about something that doesn't. First Berserk demo. So, yeah. Johnny, listen, man. This first Berserk demo has got a really bad rap all over my Discord and in a couple other places I checked, and I haven't got to check it. So what are the details that you have experienced? What's the situations you have experienced with this demo? Is it a stuttery mess?
So I played it on PS5. It ran fine, so I didn't have PS5. The stutter.
Okay.
Yeah, I played on PS5. The problem is, and this is just a demo, and we've had cases before where the demo I didn't like, but then the main game I did like. So it could be another one of those. But to me, it's pretty much like a cookie cutter Dark Souls type of experience. It's checking every box. Parries, blocks, perfect dash, or okay, that wasn't a Dark Souls thing, but either way, like the stuff you've come to expect to an extreme. Like,
wow,
you can't jump right? So you're in the same way. It kind of feels like I'm back to Dark Souls, where I'm this titanic warrior, but I'm incapable of, surpassing a tiny ledge, right?
Right.
So some of these things feel a bit outdated to me, and it feels like when you see all these same checkpoints presented to you in the first minute of gameplay, it feels almost oppressive, almost like, dude, I'm going through this again. It's like the same thing again in a way.
Okay.
And I didn't feel anything unique like I did for Lies of P, where I did think the parry felt pretty good and there was something unique there. I'm not really feeling it so far with this one. I think it is pretty derivative of all the Souls stuff we've seen. You have the bonfire, respawning enemies, all the same stuff you expect.
All right. Okay.
And leveling up at the bonfires. So that's what I would say. If you're having an itch for a Souls game, it's worth checking out the demo. I will say also the graphics surprised me, because in the trailer they had shown it was a really good cinematic. Like the cinematic looked very realistic in a way. It was just a stylistic aspect. They were going for a very photorealistic thing in the cinematic, but the gameplay is very different. The gameplay is much more stylized. You got the almost Darkest Dungeon type,
like a little bit of grunge,
3D
a little bit of dirty grunge
thing
going on.
A little bit, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, just be aware of that. The presentation is not that high level as maybe we expected based on some of the early presentations. Worth checking the demo if you like that type of thing. To me, it felt too much like everything else I've played. And at this point, I've played so many of these games that it really needs to feel unique to get me excited to buy a game, go through it. I have to feel something interesting in it. And so far, I haven't.
Dylan says the game also has a Neo light gear system, which I found strange. Did you mess with the gear?
Not too much. So far, I'm just picking up everything I find. I haven't messed up with inventory at all. I'm just sort of playing it out.
All right. What about you, Silver? Have you checked this one out?
I have not, though. I just remembered about Dynasty Warriors Origins actually also has a demo for people who might want to try it out.
Yeah,
I forgot to mention that.
Check out demos. Yeah, this one's got really just blasted for technical issues. So it's hard to know what's a technical issue and what's what the gameplay is. But the same thing I've heard is pretty derivative, and derivative can be positive. Well, it usually sounds negative. So in the terms that Johnny's talking about, I've heard that it is derivative. I have heard the atmosphere is sort of cool and different. So there was some positives there. I think the art style is definitely that dirty grunge, off kilter art style, which might appeal to some people. This is the same way the Surge came across for a lot of people, where people were probably assuming something higher sci-fi, and it turned out to be that grungier, dirtier oil and steam sci-fi, where you can still see the pneumatics and things. That's sort of the way this is, but in a fantasy. I think
the more neutral word you might be looking for might be formulaic rather than derivative.
Yeah, because I don't want to, right? I certainly don't want to say that.
Well, it's derivative in the sense that it's directly derived from those games. But yes, it is following that formula pretty much, Yeah.
Yeah, man, I don't know. Even Kroger changes their Coke formula a little bit.
Yeah.
And if it's not changing the formula up almost at all, it's going to be really hard to deliver.
And I didn't want to call it anime Souls, but that's kind of the first thing I thought about it.
Oh, okay.
So just trying to explain what I meant by stylized. The character almost has it's not a cell shading. It is pretty much like an anime-esque type look to it. Okay. People can look up, gameplay from it and see what they think, but that's sort of what it reminded me of. Yeah.
And then the Sly Crow says it's better than Code Vein, though, in my honest opinion.
Right. So Code Vein was full on Anime Souls. This is not that.
This is like
it's just
Anime Souls
yeah.
light.
It's got Anime Souls light. It's got a bit of like vampire stuff, like you said, in the setting going on. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, like the combat has to feel really good in these games, right? Because that's your bread and butter.
It's your bread and butter.
And to me,
absolutely,
the problem is the dashes didn't feel great because you would still get hit at times, even if you dash. So it's one of those where, you can still get hit. So like the window of invulnerability is not that consistent, where, for example, if they're doing like a poke attack and you dash into it, you would expect to not be hit if you got the timing right, but you often still do. So you actually have to dodge out of the attack itself. It's kind of hard to explain. The best way I can say it, the dodge felt a bit inconsistent compared to other games of this style, and there's something about the range of your weapons that felt really bad. It felt like you had the range of a popsicle, like you have to get right up there on enemies to actually hit your axe.
That is something I saw during the trailers even of gameplay.
Yeah.
I would also say the closer you stick to the formulaic, the more you have to make sure that it feels as good as the original formula.
Yeah, the more execution matters, right?
Yeah, the more you go outside of that, like you got the Surge, which went outside of that, so therefore the expectation slightly changes.
And you get some leeway,
You get some leeway, and the leeway, in fact, that is sort of what makes whatever it is special. And if you don't have any leeway or you're not given any because you stick to the formula, then people will judge you against that and start judging the other things even harsher because of that. And that seems where this one is. We'll just have to see, because I do remember that a lot of this was being discussed around the marionette game where you're the kid from Dune.
Liza P.
Liza P. There was a really harsh response to Liza P demo, and then that one ended up turning out to be, for a lot of people, great. So who knows?
Yeah.
I don't remember when this one comes out. So if they have some time to clear it up, or this demo's old, which we have seen at times happen, maybe it'll end up, doing way better. Drum Dude asks us a quick question. I know a whole 5 people care, but what do you guys think about Yoshida basically insinuating Sony doesn't care to support the PSVR? I think it's absolutely true. The PSVR, that's true. Yeah. I don't think it was, he may have insinuated, but I think just looking at how things are, the developers that they've shuttered, their own VR developers, that's it got released and it didn't do what they thought it was going to do. Sony's been experimenting as of late, Portal, PSVR 2.
Yeah, and it didn't really pan out.
And VR as a whole is not panning out, so it's not too surprising to see them move on. And let's talk about them moving on. Sony cancels 2 service games. I'm going to read this guy to you, and we will discuss this. This news popped yesterday. Pretty interesting news, not too surprising, but a little bit. January 16th, Sony canceled 2 unannounced service games. One was God of War, a live service game developed by Bluepoint. It was intended to expand God of War into the live service domain, which is weird because they did Demon Souls. So that is just odd. Sony confirmed Bluepoint remains operational. No announced layoffs at this time. Ben Studios also had a live service game. Ben Studio is Days Gone, and they were developing a live service game. At this time, I haven't heard any information on what their live service game was. So we know that at least one was, God of War live service, which I don't know what to even say about that, like what that would be or what it would look like. But then Bend as well. The one thing I want to talk about is the business side for a second. So they basically have stopped these guys. If that stopping had happened yesterday, you're talking 3 to 4 years for them to get, let's say, a high quality first person title out. 3 years we'll go with at the minimum. So you're talking end of 2028, 2029 for maybe both of them for this to happen. Pretty heady for them to cancel them. But I think that they're seeing the same stuff all of us are seeing, where live service can work. We've seen it with Marvel's, but it needs an edge, right? And I don't think God of War translates nearly like Marvel Rivals does. Marvel is
No,
built
I
on a
very much
ton of
agree.
people doing a ton of things. That is a battle arena game in and of itself. You're just like, dude, God of War is Kratos kicking the shit out of everybody.
Yeah, and we can't all be Kratos.
We
like
can't all be
fighting each other.
Kratos. We cannot. We cannot. There's only two allowed, him and me.
I mean, I would assume that it's probably going to be other gods involved than that
Might
you
have
would
been.
play.
Might have been. Would have been cool. Would
Potentially.
have been cool. But
So
not
maybe it's Gods of War. No.
Yeah.
Gods of Wars. So those two were canceled. Again, heady for them to cancel them, but I do think that we're seeing companies
Or it's
change.
a Highlander, there can only be one situation where there's supposed to only be one God of War at the end of it.
Each one slightly different with a slightly different scar on his face, and whoever wins is basically the real Kratos. You know, I'm sure some data will leak at some point. I'm sure pictures will leak, or somebody, will ArtStation will have some concept art or something at some point on these. But I do see that it's not that surprising that they did it. They still have many that are going forward at this time, because at one point they had 12 to 13. I think they've canceled 2 others. They had Concord, and then here's 2 more. So they're still in the 6 to 7 range, at this point, which is pretty crazy. One thing to remember is one service game can pay your bills for a long time. So Helldivers 2, in fact, was a total success. Well, not total, but it's now a total success for them. So I could certainly see them, still eyeing it. Every company's looking at service to try to figure out a way to do it. But I don't know, guys. I mean, Astrobot makes more sense to me than God of War. If you did an Astrobot battle arena game where you had all of the IP characters from all the Sony games running around and fighting people, that makes way more sense than a God of War service game. But
I think at that point, maybe you would also have, I could see more pushback, I guess, from the monetization of that and those properties than from like a single Astrobot game, I guess.
I don't know if they care about pushback if they can make money from it. Like,
I don't think Sony would necessarily care.
Yeah. The other companies that run some of those might.
But it would generate potentially some bad publicity, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't.
Yeah, it's hard to know, right? I mean, I think there's always going to be pushback, but if it's a free-to-play game, because Concord's big failure was that it wasn't, and then you look at Helldivers and you're like, oh, they charged for that. That one did well, but that's also because I think Helldivers was a complete game in so many ways.
Helldivers,
it's just a different
in Helldivers,
thing.
the content outside of the initial buy-in is basically free.
Yeah,
it's accessible for free,
and it just has more
with grinding
stuff. More stuff to do. Like, it matters how much stuff you have. We'll just generally say stuff. But Lombardo says everything generates some bad publicity these days, Silver. That is absolutely true. That's what I was sort of getting at, was bad publicity versus true actionable bad publicity. It just depends on how well it was done. But Astrobot, free-to-play battle arena game where you have unlockable skins and different planets you go to do different battle arenas, fits right into Astrobot. And
you already,
there
was already some scuttlebutt from some developers that didn't want to have their licenses with Astrobot, right?
Yeah. But not enough that it would stop them from having 40 or 50.
No.
But yeah, there would be pushback because there's some beloved stuff there. But yeah, so I mean, and we had some more layoffs. We had some other companies in the last week who have done some layoffs and changed their plans for games. And then, Shadows delayed. What was it, last week or a week before, where Shadows delayed? So, I mean, this is not new stuff for people. I think the big surprise is that Sony had really gone forward. I think a lot of people were hoping that the stories about Sony having 12 or 13 was just like a CEO saying we did, but it didn't really mean they did. Obviously they did. Now we're starting to see the cancellations, and it's good. It's good. To me, it shows companies are looking at what's going on, and they're more cognizant of current data than we've seen in the past, where they try to force shit through. And they're like, this will be successful regardless. We know better. And it's like, when you look at the numbers, I think numbers know more than you or I. Numbers are just, they deliver quite well. You can look at them and go, this is not going to work, or this is going to work. Anybody have anything else to say about those 2 service games cancellations? There's not a lot more data there.
Yeah.
Nothing. Bend service game. Any questions on that? Do you think it was a Days Gone? Do you think that the service game was maybe Days Gone? Like a Days Gone battle arena zombie game? That can sort of be fun. Like a WWZ almost, but their own version. Because WWZ did quite well. I could see something like that. Did you guys do Days Gone?
Yes.
Yeah.
You guys both did Days Gone?
I did it on both PlayStation and on PC.
So there you go. They could have done a Days Gone. I would have been more interested playing that than like a new thing from them. But that's just because that's all I really know from them right now. They're not really known for a lot of stuff other than that.
I mean, they did kind of do the Days Gone remaster with the PS5 update for it.
Yeah, true. They had done that. And then Assassin's Creed also. Oh, I talked about the exploration thing. And then next up, games we suck at. So this popped up in a discussion in another chat where we were talking. I was saying, oh, I like this game and this game. And I realized 2D fighters, I'm generally just pretty bad at. Like, like not especially when I look at like how I do in a 3D fighter versus a 2D fighter, I'm definitely on the lower tier there. There was an S tier. I would certainly not be there. And so the discussion was, is there, like, I feel there's far more games we're not good at than good at, just, because of our time, how much time we have to train in it, how much time we have to do. But is there a particular genre that you find yourself maybe not, even with time, you're like, dude, I don't mean like an arbitrary one, like, yeah, anime management, girl sim. I'm talking about like a major genre. Is there one out there that you're like, I'm barely not good at these?
There's a couple. I mean, famously in particular is rhythm games. I'm really terrible at.
Oh, rhythm, yeah.
Like
your Beat Sabers, your Guitar Heroes.
Yeah, and also like I remember in particular, like in GTA San Andreas, like a lot of people struggled with some of the missions. What I struggled with in that game in particular were like the dancing mini game with the dates, where you had to like hit the buttons as they were coming down, in time in the right timing. Like that was a nightmare for me. Like that was literally worse than any Dark Souls games.
Damn.
Like, that was like getting through those dates. That was terrible. Like that's always been something that for some reason the wires in my brain just couldn't connect with that. Where with parry timing and stuff like that and comboing for action games, which is a rhythm game kind of in its own, that's always been sort of natural. But that kind of rhythm game, I've always deeply struggled with. Also, strategy games that require you to multitask and do multiple things at once, where I have a tendency to get very myopic and get very focused on one thing. So like the big games there are like Total Annihilation, for instance, and Supreme Commander. Like those games I always struggled with a lot because I would lose oversight or overview of the entire battlefield and get way too focused on like one point on the battlefield. And then I would maybe win the battle there, but I would lose all the battles around
it,
that area where I had lost oversight.
A lot of people here are saying racing. Multiple people say racing or driving games. And then Aries says I'm terrible at platformers. What about you, Johnny?
Yeah, there are some that I'm bad at, but I haven't put enough time to know whether I could get over that hump. So like fighting games, never really put enough time into them to see if I could become decent. But I've always sucked at them. And I would say platforming, the same. I'm really bad at it. Maybe if I put a lot of time, but I don't have the interest to actually get over the hump. So that's probably going to stay that way. One game that really kicked my ass was Monster Hunter World. And I guess the same for Rise, although Rise was a bit more friendly. But there is something about the clunkiness of the weapons in World. And as someone who was coming into it without having played any other Monster Hunter, I was playing with Greatsword. And the thing with that specific weapon is that you need to very precisely know the enemy moveset so that you can actually, disjoint their attacks with your tackle, and then know, when to charge and when to do all this stuff. And that it never felt natural. I mean, I did fine. I beat like all the content in the game, right? But it took me a lot of time. I think I put in like 400 hours total.
Damn.
And realistically, that's probably a lot longer than what a lot of other people, like it might have come easier to a lot of other people.
Right.
Yeah. And again, that is a difficult weapon to pick up. It's not like the easy mode of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, maybe that was on me too for picking a difficult weapon to stick to. But yeah, that game definitely was very hard for me, very non-intuitive.
I'll cheat and say half of what Silver's answer was is definitely for me. If the rhythm game goes with buttons moving to the left, I suck.
Oh, dude.
If they're up and down, if they're straight at me, no issues. And it might be because I played Asteroid or fucking Missile Command or something when I was a kid, so I'm accustomed to top down. But when that shit's going right to left, like Yakuza, I think goes right to left on the singing stuff, and oh man.
Yeah, and
I don't know what.
I just remembered Bully had some of that as well in some
Bully
of the classroom
did.
mini games. Yeah,
classroom mini
that
games.
was also a nightmare for me to get through some of those.
Absolutely, the chemical, the mixing chemicals, and they're going like this, and you're like, what the? For some reason, this is just 20 times harder for me than from the top. From the top, it's like no issues whatsoever. But there's something about that right to left that is, it is a distinct difficulty in the moment I see it. It's just like if I'm playing a fighting game and I'm going right to left. If I'm like the guy on that side, player 2 side, my win rate is like 1/10 what it is if I'm going left to right, like just because I've been accustomed to it. But yeah, the horizontal versus vertical. When it comes to other stuff like that, I would say RTSs. I'll just say I have no strategy in RTSs. I'm a little like Silver, but I think in a weird way, I can't get myopic and I can't also sit back. I get right in the middle ground, and I'm never great at any one particular part at it. It's very difficult when I'm doing an RTS, and there's, especially when it gets into the big RTSs, when suddenly there's, multiple guys all at the same time doing crazy shit, where I have a tendency to not put enough anywhere. I'm one of those guys that likes to cover the board. I've always been that guy. And so when I'll send 10 troops to slow these guys down, 10 troops to slow these guys, because I don't want to lose anybody. I don't want anybody to be able to just run in. So I will never say, I'm going to take the loss over here. I'm like, oh no, that's never going to happen. I'm going to send some swordsmen to go die over here. Even though it makes no real sense. I'm like, I want to sort of fool him into thinking I'm still defending that spot, when, let's be honest, nobody's going to be fooled. And so in those games, I find tremendous difficulty in loss and losing. I will tell stories about a horseman in my brain. I'll be like, dude, those 7 guys lived. I can't get them killed. And then I'll put them somewhere else, and I'll be like, I could use them, but I won't. And then pretty soon I've got so many stories going on or so many thoughts in my brain that I won't risk anybody. And I become like the person who's just sort of, I don't turtle either. I'm not good at that. That's the other thing. You would think somebody who doesn't risk anything would be good at, sitting back and building stuff. But instead, I'm exploring. I've got one villager 10 nations away in the bad enemy territory, still looking at shit getting attacked, and I'm running away, then trying to find a way past him when that guy should just let die. Yeah, I'm definitely, that's not my strong point. RTSs that are more contained are definitely, which is weird because Age of Empires I do fine at, but it might just be after millennia of playing that game. It might just be total familiarity with how Age of Empires in particular works.
Yeah. Speaking of millennia, that's maybe a good barometer for difficulty. Like in Elden Ring, did you guys get to millennia? Did you?
Yeah.
You beat that boss?
Yeah.
Was that difficult, easy? For a lot of people, that's sort of, the peak of difficulty in some games.
Go ahead, Silver. Then I'll give my answer.
Well, for me, millennia was pretty much the first direct hard counter to my build I encountered, because I was running sword and board. And I was used to just blocking attacks. But the problem with millennia was if I allowed her to wail on my shield, she would regenerate health.
Right.
So I couldn't really do that anymore. So I had to sort of readjust my entire sort of approach just for that fight. But ultimately, I didn't find her that bad compared to a lot of other bosses. It was really just a persistence kind of thing where you learn it and then it becomes muscle memory, and then
I think that's one thing that people get wrong when they say, I just don't have the reaction speed to play these games. I think, guys, a lot of it is about anticipation more than, because my reaction speed is not very good. You know, if you test me on something I'm not used to, or like I don't know, the first time I'm playing one of those games, I absolutely think it is anticipation, like just knowing what's coming.
I think a lot of it is definitely in the mind more so than like a physical skill. Where I mean, you can get very, very far in FromSoft games just sprinting around, slashing once or twice, and then sprinting out, like sprinting in and out. Like that was my bread and butter through a lot of Dark Souls From Software games. Like not a lot of tactics necessarily to that, but enemies couldn't hit you consistently, and you could punish them for it when they missed. So just having patience and not getting greedy with more than one or two hits, like that'll get you very, very, very far in those games.
So was Malenia hard? No, because that son of a bitch I've already told you about on the bridge I don't know what was going on, but I had such a hard time with a very early sub boss that by the time I got to anybody else, my reaction speed was so fucking fast because I had got schooled for so long. And this happens to me in every game. I realize we will be talking behind the scenes on a review or something that you and I are working on, and including the shooter, Remnant 2, or Remnant 1.
Sure.
Sorry, Remnant 1 when I was DMing you guys. And I'll be like, I don't know what is going on with this guy? Like, what the fuck? Neo 2 was the same way. This guy who shouldn't be, and it's because you're a reviewer, you don't have a guide, you're just going in, there's nobody to even ask. But by the time I have just died so many times to that guy, that
you've been put through the grinder.
I've been put through the grinder that any movement, you're so attuned at a higher level that I mean, dude, it is a skill gap early usually. I will say, was it Neo 1 or 2 with the fucking lady in the canyon that I always talk about, where I went down and she just immolated me like 90 I think that might be Neo 2. There was a lady, a bee lady maybe? I can't remember. I just remember you hop off a thing and you go into like a valley and she's there. And she just schooled me a bunch of times. In Neo 2, there's also the horse guy right at the starting that I fought a bunch of times. And I remember talking to, I think it was G2, Carlos. He had come on the podcast right prior to that. And I was like, dude, here's a picture of how many times I've died. Like, because it counted your deaths. And I'm like, one guy. Like, what is going on? But then once you move past that, everything becomes like, you know, weirdly easier.
Right.
I will say this. My tactic now is turning ego off and not attempting. I think I told this to Johnny. And this works, and this is the only bit of advice that I can give that I think is usable to people playing games. Go into those battles and do not try to hit the enemy. Instead, just dodge and see how long you can live. And that's why I think Black Myth was not super hard for me. Because when I went into Black Myth and there was a guy, I would not be trying to defeat him right away. I would go in and I would just be like, watch every single thing they do, have no ego. I'm going to die. And just try to see all the different move sets, run around, try to trigger them for low and high. Don't try to defeat them right away. This is just for me speaking. I don't feel the need that I have to defeat everybody the first time I see them. I don't try to go hard. But what I did learn was by doing that and passing that on to the people in the Discord were like, holy shit, it's like I'm not getting hit. And it's a little bit the same how you train or spar, where sometimes they'll be like, you're not really allowed to throw anything. You have to just defend against people to learn. You're not looking for an opening at all. You're looking for what they're doing, and you're trying to see what they're doing. And that I can say honestly, if you have problems with these games, it was a huge help for a lot of the people in the Discord.
The boss in Elden Ring that ended up being a wall for me was the Gargoyle tag team, where I really, really struggled with them. Like I was stuck on hours with those guys in Elden Ring.
Is that
Oh, yeah,
the guy
the two
with the
gargoyles?
The two giant gargoyles.
Okay, different one. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
They're an optional boss, I think.
Yeah, in fact, Carrick, I was using that technique you're talking about in Wukong because I got to a certain boss in like a fiery area that had some super cool moves and like had a really cool soundtrack to it, so that you could tell like, hey, this is a tough boss, you know, because everything indicated. And I was just, you know what, I'm gonna do Carrick strategy. I'm just gonna sit back and really learn. And yeah, that allows you to really dial in on what they're doing. And all your mental stack is just on that.
Right.
And then once that becomes so easy to parse that you don't have to spend as much mental, now you can think about what you're doing and how you're reacting to that. Because the difference is that now you understand, you know, oh, he's going to do the third attack and he's quiet for a bit, right? Until his next combo.
Yeah.
But until you actually know the moves, everything looks like there's no breaks.
It looks like fighting a Tasmanian devil in a Looney Tunes cartoon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just craziness. The other thing I noticed is if you do that, you'll start noticing cool little things animators do. Like a power attack that's high might have a person's cloak swing lower to the ground versus higher to the ground. And if you're just defending, you'll start out of the corner of your eye, go, why is that in a different spot? Oh, it just must be where I'm standing. And then you realize, holy shit, that's actually a very specific animation difference between low and high. And even though it's fast and it looks a certain way, you guys can just look at it and go, okay, that's low for sure, because that's, you know, there's another tell that has nothing to do with a weapon or timing or anything like that. The animators have done you a service and helped you out. So yeah, those are some of the bad games. I saw some people saying FPS were bad as well, that they were bad at FPS. I think a lot of people feel that they get bad at FPS as they get older, which I sort of understand, but I also think that the assumption that the skill drop-off is so dramatic is probably too dramatic to be realistic. You see a lot of people say, my skills have dramatically dropped off, and I'm like, I don't know if that, I mean, it's possible, but I feel like a lot of people just give up pretty quickly, and they're like, this is too much for me. This is too fast. This is, you know.
Yeah, and also a huge part of your skill level is, you know, from practice, execution, and like we were saying, anticipation as well.
Yeah. And
I think a lot of that overrides whatever physical, you know, twitch response you have. I think that's much more impactful. Yeah. We see that when we play, you know, when someone clearly knows the level or, you know, they're really good with a particular weapon. They're just used to the recoil or whatever on it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a specific expertise that you can pick up. Yeah, I think overall it just has to do with playing it. And some people give up pretty quick. And, you know, I've tried to invite people to play an FPS and they're like, well, that, you know, there's too much going on or whatever. And I'm like, well, it might be true, but it also may be true that it's just different for you right now and it'll clear up.
Yep.
MK Bandit, $20 super chat. Happy Friday. Recovering from a 17-hour straight drive yesterday, moving from the Bay Area to Albuquerque. 17. Jesus.
Oh, God damn.
Yeah.
I listened to old podcasts to kill the time. Thanks for saving my sanity. I'm hoping to become more active in the Discord. Yeah, we'd love to have you more in the Discord. Our Discord is like one of the saving graces for me. So anybody who can jump in. Remember, if you're a YouTube member, you can also jump in, talk about games. Doing a lot of streaming lately. We've been having a really good time with streaming different games. It's going to be very cool with some of these big games because we've already got some plans for different streams. The Dragon's Dogma one had, I don't think we'll beat Dragon's Dogma. That was 33 people at one time, but streaming it. But I do think we're going to test the servers at some point. When you have that many people streaming, I'm always surprised Discord even runs, let alone we can see it. Like that actually stuns me even more that, you know, a person can actually watch it or view it. Let's see. Any other games that we suck at?
Not that come to mind. T-Monk had an interesting question in the chat, though. Do you guys prefer combat-heavy games to give most of the diversity to the enemies or more diversity to the player characters?
Oh.
So more build diversity or more enemy diversity, essentially, is what I'm getting.
I don't view those as a dichotomy. I don't know about you guys. I don't think you need to sacrifice one.
Well, you
to
don't need
other.
to, but if you had to have one over
If
the
you
other,
had to, I think, yeah.
Okay.
Man, okay, so here's the problem.
Which would you prefer? What
Here's
would
the
your
problem.
preference be?
If it's boring and everybody looks cool, that triggers my exploration and desire to see more. So that's awesome. But if it's the same moves, those moves got to be good. Those basic moves are going to have to be fucking great for me to continue to want to play it. But the opposite is absolutely true. If I have amazing moves and it's the same 11 jackasses standing around in a row that I'm mowing down, that is going to be like many games we already currently play, where it feels like the player character has this repertoire of fucking moves that nobody else in the universe has. So I would say good core moves and then interesting bosses would actually, you could say Black Myth is sort of close to this. Black Myth didn't have a ton of weapons. It had different stabs, which I thought was going to be detrimental to Black Myth. And instead, it only had 3 skill trees, really. And
yeah,
I mean, that's not low, but it's lower than a lot of the games we play.
Yeah.
So I would say if I had to choose, I'd rather have some core good moves and super interesting enemies forever. Yeah. That's mine.
It would be enemy diversity for me as well. Probably as the more important of the two.
All right. What about you, Johnny?
I would agree with you guys. I think that build diversity is great, but if the enemy diversity is terrible, then
doesn't account for it. Yeah.
It doesn't account for it. Yeah, it doesn't make up for
it. When you go into that area, right? And this can happen with Division, a game I love to do. I'll go in and I'll see the guys and they've got 3 moves and a drone or whatever. And you're like, okay, whatever. But then you occasionally get a DLC or whatever. And there's a new guy and he's got, a little bit of diversity there. Boy, do you feel that like sense of amazement, that sort of builds up where you're like, oh my God. And you start really getting excited because things feel different, even though maybe it's just a different pattern and a different location, but that sense of exploration drives me more than the sense of just me getting another skill. Because if I can twirl and kill somebody and I can stab and kill somebody, at some point I stop twirling. I'm like, there's no reason to.
Right.
It just becomes me kicking the shit out of these jackasses. Soulskeeper, $60, 60 pounds super chat. What's up, sir?
I think
he said, hang on, I'm going to read this. Slightly belated Happy New Year. What do you think about From Software structures? How do you think, and what do you think about how From Software structures their DLC access and replayability? I did not have huge issues pre-Elden Ring, but it sucks balls that a huge time sink is needed for Shadow of the Erd Tree. I agree.
Yeah.
I hate it. In
fact, it's always been bad, by the way, in their games. Mm-hmm. It's always been that there's a specific point in the story where you can, find a thing and then use that to teleport to the DLC area.
Yep.
And pretty much every time, I think in every game, you have been under-leveled when you've done that. Mm-hmm. So like if you play normally and you reach that point in the story where you can access the DLC, I think pretty much in every game they've done, you've been under-leveled in DLC area.
Yeah.
And then you have to do a bunch of catching up, right? And to be fair to them, they did add some good systems in the Shadow of the Erd Tree to catch up, right? To like make you stronger in the DLC itself. So that's cool. But I would love to see a more maybe standalone option. Like, for example, if you wanted to pick from like some starting characters that maybe start at a certain level and they have like some pre-allocated stats, like the cleric, whatever, along the same classes. I think that would be really nice if someone doesn't want to, because dude, I had just started New Game Plus when I left Elden Ring.
Right.
So when I came back to it, my options to get to the DLC were play through New Game Plus until that point, or start a new character and play to that point.
Right.
And it was not like a trivial amount of gameplay to get to it. I would say, it was a handful of hours.
Yeah.
Even for
Yeah.
someone who already knew the game and knew like how to get the place and what to do and everything. So yeah, I think it's a hassle, man. We saw the same for the Surge and other games of this type.
Thank you for mentioning the Surge, because that was the game I was
Yeah.
going to mention that you and I both had an issue with, where Surge
Yes, yeah,
Surge
too
2's DLC was placed. I was just like, this is
awkward.
it's
Bit
awkward. And DLCs for, let's say, or not DLCs, expansions for WoW, you used to be able to get an expansion for WoW and it would be like, here's your level 20 character or what have you. I would just rather have something like that, where if you want to go to it, it levels, or it scales correctly in the story. And it's like, you go in at this level, that's where the enemies are scaled, at this level. And it works in that way. And then when you come out, the world rescales to whatever you are now, and you just move on. And that's the way it is. I do not like it that it's 8, 10, 20 hours in on a DLC, because that DLC offers an additional number of things that are not available base game, like weapons. So now you've got these, it's almost like, it's going to sound weird. Don't like, it's going to sound a little weird, but it almost feels like it's monetized in a way to get you. Now you're not only experiencing the normal thing, but to get these weapons or the new armor, which they added a bunch. The only way to do it is to continue to play that and jump in. You can't just jump in right away. I think a lot of people would have bought Erdtree more so if you just said, if you're starting a new character, you can jump right in. And I don't know if a hardcore person would have been mad about that. I don't see why. Personally, I don't think anybody would have been mad about it. Certainly the people I've talked to, it doesn't feel like they would have been mad. Soulskeeper, $6. And let's hit the 10 for the additional Kingdom Come 2 Q&A. Oh, there we go. Yeah. All right. So you did hit that. So Kingdom Come. So let me talk a little bit more about Kingdom Come real quick. Some stuff that we were going to just cover with the patrons, but we'll cover here as well. Good job for hitting the bonus stack. So with Kingdom Come, the one thing I have to say that I personally think Kingdom Come 2 does a fantastic job with, and I will not spoil anything, but I will simply say, because this was asked of me just about 2 minutes ago in a DM as well, how does it onboard new players? I won't give you the exact way it does it, but I will tell you this. It smartly doesn't do it all at once. It does it
incrementally.
Not necessarily. It's really difficult to describe without ruining it. But we'll go with incrementally. But they're big increments. But there's a couple. And it does it in a way I was not expecting at all. And I couldn't even figure out for a brief moment. I was like, what is this? What exactly is going on? And it does it in a heartfelt way that quite surprised me. And it, as somebody who hasn't played Kingdom Come since I reviewed it, and then I played the DLC, but not the base game, right?
Right.
It does a good job of hitting the marks more than once. So if you miss one idea, you might get it again a little bit later. And I thought that was really intelligent. It definitely won't appeal to every newcomer. It won't explain every nuance, but it does enough. And then the story and the way they talk and the stories they tell and the camaraderie you have with chatter and barks between NPCs also gives you bits of data. And last thing I'll say without any spoilers is picking your skills is fucking fun. Picking your skills is pretty goddamn cool in this. There's a couple skills you get to pick that are awesome.
Is there like a previously on, like in preload?
Not in the way that you would. At least I haven't seen it. I didn't hit any. I just hit new game. Like I just jumped in.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Wait a minute. There's a little bit, but the main part of it is in the game. And but back to the skills thing for a second. Because I'm probably going to do a video about this, but there's something that pops up in the game where I was like, oh, I want this skill. I'm going to go with this. And something happened. And if you're a certain type of player, you might be really mad. You might be like, wait, what? Because I picked this. But what it did was it caused me to treat that. Okay, it made the skill a quest. I'm not going to say any more than that. It made the skill a quest, which I did not expect. And it doesn't do it in this skill is a quest. That's not what it does. It does it in a way to where I could treat that skill like a quest because I needed this thing. And that to me was shockingly cool because it's a small part, doesn't require much more than just putting your quest line together, but they attached it to a particular thing I thought was going to be available right away. And that turned into multiple hours of trudging across the world doing crazy shit because yes, I know there's other stuff in the world going on, but I really am like, I said I wanted this. That was important to me in the narrative at the starting. So I'm going to track this thing. I'm going to do what it needs. And that was awesome. Not saying the entire game's awesome. I'm saying what it does with that skill thing is really fun. And we've seen it somewhat done before, but it just feels natural in this game because the camaraderie is still there and the chatter. They make the chatter and bark and discussions that you do at different cutscenes. They aren't just the cutscene. There's some overlap with the barks that happened prior, so it feels like it's fleshed out more. It doesn't feel like, hey, cutscene, sit down, here's your shit, pay attention, don't take a piss. Because everything important is going to be delivered, boom, right here. That's not how it goes. Yeah, that was phenomenal. And feel free, anybody, to ask questions. I can only answer questions that have to do up to a certain part, but I will try to answer any that you have currently about.
I wanted to ask you something. In the first one, the beginning of the game was a huge kind of emotional, event that kicks things off, right? It's a very dramatic start. And I was thinking if does the second one follow a similar blueprint, or is it, let's say, less emotionally charged and maybe a bit more like business as usual and sort of a bit more chill?
It is
in the starting.
It attempts to be as emotionally resonant as the first beginning stuff that occurs to get Henry to become whatever he needs to become.
Get on the journey.
However, it'll be up to you to buy in because it's not your family. Like the first one was your family, so that's
it's like more like around you, maybe not directly.
I won't even say that. I don't even want to get into that, but I will say that like it depends. For me, this is going to sound, and there's reasons why. Once we get, once the embargo gets up, we'll do a sit down. We might even do a spoiler cast about this one because I sort of wanted to do a spoiler cast. But for me, it mattered more, and there's a reason why. It's like when Henry first goes on his trip, they tried to. I didn't really care for his family. Whatever. It was just like, okay, here's his dad. Here's his, you know what I mean. And there's questions about stuff. For reasons I'm not going to describe, I cared more about the stuff that was occurring in the first hour of this one. Not because I was invested in Henry, but the things going on and the people. There's a couple oddities that'll make people go, oh, that's an interesting way to start a game or an interesting thing to do here. But personally, it's all going to matter what you care about. If you buy into the story, if you buy into family, friends, nation, nationality, where you're from, do those things matter to you? So I can't say it'll matter to everybody. This is why story's so fucking difficult to really like review, because one person won't care. If you're an orphan, you're going to care differently than a person who lives in a home with 10 kids versus 2 versus 1, right? It all changes versus what your parents were like. But yeah, it's emotionally resonant for me. I'll say that. I was also asked something here. It looks like, is the combat easier or at least more user-friendly? It is more user-friendly. It is still difficult. It is still that crunchaholic. I mean, I can't lie. It's still crunchy, and fighting multiple guys is like, damn. It's just no matter what in any game, I think we can all agree every game's tried it differently. Assassin's Creed's hit Y to win, right? Or they've attempted that. It's changed. Batman, those are not first-person games. I'm just explaining that multiple enemies is difficult to do right in a game. In this game, you're in armor, or even if you're not in armor, you're still stuck to that first person. And there are times where you're like, damn, Henry, man, you need to be limber. Henry needs to do some stretching, because that dude also trying to run away from guys in this game. Remember, that's what
Ain't
I
gonna
thought you were
happen.
getting at. I thought you were getting at the first game when you run out of that village, and I
Sure.
was telling you about the review where I was just getting killed like on the way out.
Dude, I got
times.
smoked in that. Yeah.
So in this one, in a normal encounter I had at the starting, I was like getting smoked and a lot. And you know, you got your stamina to worry about and your strength. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting the shit kicked out of me, blah, blah, blah. So I decide to run away. And I'm telling you, again, they just don't care about stamina. So you're out of stamina, you're breathing hard, you turn around and they're all right there. And they're like right here, like bad guys at a window in a horror movie. And you're like, seriously? None of you guys get tired? You're wearing armor. I'm in my underwear. You know, I wasn't in my underwear, but I was in like, you know, beggar's clothes, I think, at the starting. And yeah, it was crazy. Somebody said we were near spoilers. We're not even close to spoilers, guys. I know what a spoiler is. Don't worry about it. Unless you don't know this game is called Kingdom Come 2. Then, sorry, the game is called Kingdom Come 2. We're talking about it. You're fine. And then let's see. I was also asked how shields and combat like that works. Works pretty much the same. Inventory's improved. Sound, you know, that's for the review. Sound, music, voices for the review. I would say that you should expect, you know, pretty much generically the same kind of thing.
Same level of like voice acting and stuff, like similar.
Yeah, similar stuff. And then can you still, I think I was asked if you can still be interrupted during quick travel. Yes, you can. Yeah. So if you're traveling and it's particular times of days do matter. I haven't tracked like if a forest is nearby, if you go by, you know, if you get attacked more often at night by wolves. I assume you do because I've had a lot of wolf encounters. A lot. There's a lot. There's wolves in this one. And
that's annoying.
There's a lot. There's a lot. You really have to be prepared. Can you use double shields? I haven't tried. I'll try today.
Disappointing.
I've not tried double shields. Yeah, I mean, everything else is pretty much, you know, what people have seen. With that, you know.
Do you think someone brand new can jump in and enjoy the game, or is it like a lot of context missing from the first one?
People can enjoy John Wick 2 if they haven't seen John Wick.
Sure.
But they're going to be missing some context in the same way here. They do try to get you along into the story. But here's the thing, Johnny. I don't think there's much in Kingdom Come 2 that couldn't be in Kingdom Come 1 and call it 1. The reason why is they do a fairly good job blocking out the starting. They do a fairly good job explaining why he's there. And then they do a fairly good job explaining why you're on a quest. We've seen that in other movies where that's the first movie. So we saw it in Star Wars. Classic movie. Star Wars is the fucking fourth movie, you know? It's like, and it's a classic, and it starts with big battles between two guys, and everything's explained to you later. So I don't see an issue. I do see that the lack of context is there. You know, you know, it would be
you
nice.
would get more if you do know like what happened to Henry and stuff.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Soul Sleeper says, I heard some negative feedback on the parry system for enemies and that you get auto parry, then forcing you to play defensive and it omits offense.
Yeah, I mean, that was in the first game.
Yeah. And that's a mixture of, so that people know how stats work. In a lot of games, stats will usually be one or two things. In Kingdom Come, a stat can feed into another stat a little bit. And so if you're tired, but you're strong, you might think, oh, just the tiredness will affect me. But there might be, I think it's vigor. There's another stat in there that can also affect certain things that you do. So it's like there's a couple stats that might slightly affect stuff, a little bit like a Dark Souls, where you get a Dark Souls and the weapon might affect 6 or 7 attributes. Certainly not near to that extent, where you can definitely find yourself at odds. I will say this is all, you know, prior to where we're not supposed to talk. There was an adventure I went on a quest, and I was fighting some guys who stole something, and I didn't have a lot of health by the time I got to them, and I hadn't slept. And that was Dark Souls level difficult. It was ridiculous. And I finally had to go sleep and go back. I mean, I tried 30, 40 times. And these were not easy guys. So it wasn't like they just annihilated me. They were not easy characters. And when I got to them and I had slept, the difference was pretty noticeable. You really do. It is an immersive sim in that way. You have to make sure you've eaten, don't overeat, make sure you've slept, and I had done a lot of battle and a lot of travel. And man, did I notice it. I mean, big time. It was definitely noticeable when I went back. I was like, okay, I'll go back one time, and I was like, and just kick the shit out of those guys. Is stealth good? We'll get to that. That's not me omitting it because there's an issue. I'll talk more about stealth when we get into it. I'll leave that for the review. But Dominic says, I'm like Absy. If I go to try something, I want to know as little as possible. Once you start detailing motivations and hinting at things, I get nervous. It's not serious, though. Alex D says, can you touch on the economy for a bit, ACG? Also, is there a hardcore mode? The economy. I have a question for you guys before I answer that. Do either one of you guys have hard times after you got it, the general gist of Kingdom Come 1? Did either one of you guys have hard times making some kind of cash in Kingdom Come?
Not remotely.
Not remotely.
Johnny? I remember struggling to find out what I should look to sell and like what is valuable to have in my inventory. Like in general, the inventory, and that ties directly into the economy as well, was a bit challenging to figure out for me.
So I felt your part at the starting, and then I haven't had too much problems making money later. There's a ton of skills and perks, and some of them involve sales of items. And what I decided was, at the very starting, even though I'm a warrior without money can't outfit himself. So I was like, I'm going to buy a couple skills that have more to do with money and selling things I know I can get, like alchemy, and spending some time there to sell those to then make money to get a better thing. And you get that sort of cycle. Once I got that, I didn't really have an issue. Things are expensive, though. I will tell you that. Things can get quite expensive in that game.
The big thing for printing money in the first Kingdom Come was picking herbs.
I would agree in here.
Herbs all over, and just either sell those directly, or you could brew them into potions and then sell the potions for a lot of money.
I would say the only thing I have an issue with is I lumber everywhere. So I have a tendency to go into places you're not supposed to go into. And then I'm not paying attention when somebody's like, trespasser or whatever, and I get attacked a lot. So for the first couple hours of playing the game, I really had to remind myself that you can't just barge into anybody's house, because just because a door is openable and not lockpick needed doesn't mean you can just walk in. And so identifying a place you can or can't go, identifying you have to have a torch on when you're in the city at night so that you don't look like you're stealthing is important. Once I figured those things out, it sort of freed me up. I will say, as always, though, resting and stuff can be difficult because you have to have certain places to rest. And I think a lot of us are accustomed to sitting on a bench in a Skyrim or almost any game where you sit down, you say, I want to waste time. And here you just sit down and you're like, oh, right, I can't just waste time here. I need to actually find a spot. And then I have a tendency to sleep in other people's beds. I'll go to a spot, think it's safe. I'll be like, okay, nobody's here. And sometimes you'll get through all the night. But if you aren't, you have to either talk your way out of it, fight your way out of it, or pay. I happen to have good, blather skill in this character. So I've been able to talk my way out of it by telling jokes and funny stories about how I got there. And he's always got a sad sob story about how he got there at night. He'll be like, well, this person said this and this, and they lied to me. And it works. And a lot of people will be like, okay, idiot, go ahead and go. And I sort of dug that. Yeah, that was very good. Let's see. Is there anything mechanic, music, etc. that you prefer in part 1 over 2? I think I'll wait to really say that for the review, just to be fair to people. But I'll just say, yes, there are things that I prefer in 1 or in other games than I do in 2, for sure. What's another thing? And then we'll wrap this up. Trying to think of, I don't want to spoil some of my videos I'm doing.
Yeah. Was there anything about the horse riding that was either different or...
Could you follow the path in number 1? I can't remember.
I never did. Dude, if you could, I never found out.
You could? Okay.
You could.
So let me say this. So far, the pathfinding on this horse is 80 billion times better than most other games. And that alone has been tremendously nice. There's even a starting where you're riding a horse and it's following the path. And I was panicking because whenever a game is like, hey, follow a horse, even in Red Dead 2, you'll get behind, what's his name? The main leader in Red Dead 2.
Arthur?
Dutch.
Oh, you'll get behind Dutch, you'll get close to Dutch, you'll get behind Dutch, you'll get close to Dutch, you'll be like weaving around. I'm always like looking. In this one, it as Todd would say, it just worked. And that has actually continued throughout the game where I'm like, holy crap, for the most part, it follows the path generally forward where it's supposed to. It hasn't killed me. It can hit people. That's pretty normal. I steer around most people. If I see a person in the middle of the woods and I'm galloping, I will try to steer out of their way just in case the collision detection, or in case the horse is like, fuck people in front of me and just smashes through them. But yeah, it's worked tremendously well pathfinding wise. Yeah, tremendously well. I steal a lot of horses, man. A lot. Like a lot. I mean, I'll go into, dude, throw a pebble, get somebody to walk to the other side of like the tavern, grab their horse, ride off, take it somewhere. If you leave it, of course, it returns the owner after a period of time. But it's like, it's so much faster to just steal a horse. And then I'm always worried in these games. This is back from Skyrim days where I'm always worried about buying a horse and it getting killed and having to figure out, how you get your horse back. So I'm like, well, if the horse is never mine in the first place, and I
can't lose a horse if you don't have one.
Yeah, tried to ride a maid, didn't work, but the horses.
It's quite an adventure you've been having. Part horse thief, part squatter.
Yeah, I can definitely tell you that my version of Henry is questionable. He makes some questionable decisions. There's been some fist fights and stuff that probably didn't need to happen. It'll be like you can talk your way out of something. I'll be like, but he didn't try to talk his way out of it, man. He was a jerk to me. So it's like, boosh.
Yeah.
And then
Mama ain't raised no bitch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Yeah, Kingdom Come, the review's coming out soon. Well, not soon, but whenever they said the embargo is, I think it's like in a while actually. And then you'll also get some coverage from me for some other games. But yeah, it's very fun. I think that overall, you just have to realize that it is an immersive sim, and it tries to immerse you in stuff that it chooses what's immersive. And so you may be like, oh damn, this is, it's like the
and
first
I don't
one.
think this is a cutscene skipper type of game, right? Because we have some members in the Discord who like to skip cutscenes and only do the gameplay part. I don't know if Solar, I certainly would believe that, but yeah.
I would not skip a cutscene in this, even if it's a generic character, because the journal, will try to tell you stuff, but I've never trusted journals in my life in a game. You can't trust them. So you might miss
some
directional cue in a game where, I just don't skip cutscenes for the most part. If I've got into it, I'm like, okay, this is a couple minutes. You can pause at any time. So if you have to get up to go to pee, you can pause at any time.
I usually think if I want to start skipping cutscenes, it's probably a red flag that I'm not that interested in the game.
Yeah. That's the way.
Usually for me, it's on replays, replaying through games.
Replayability.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could see that. I can definitely see on a replay somebody being like, "Hey, I want to skip it." But why did I get confetti across my screen just now? I don't know, but hey, I'm glad you did. I don't know. He just said he got confetti. Maybe
there's always some cause for celebration.
Maybe because we got the goal or something like that. Let's see. Did I answer everybody's questions? I answered that. The economy was a bit wonky. Can you already buy entire towns and castles? No, at least not at the part I'm at. You can use NPCs to practice. Yes, you can. There are people there that will sell you skills and practice. And I'm sure there'll be DLC for this one. I'm absolutely sure.
I would expect so, yeah.
Yeah. Next up. Well, what do we have next up, actually? Looking at news. Do we have anything that is hyper important? Looking at the news.
Nothing comes to mind.
Let's check Reddit news real quick. See if there's any gaming news.
Not that much. We kind of talked about AC Shadows, right? There's been some gameplay shown.
Yeah, there's been some gameplay shown
there.
Yeah, there's not a ton. It's sort of generically they're PR blast that they do as they're rolling up. I think they've explained everything now. Combat exploration. I think they already did stealth, so there's not much there.
You know, one thing I hadn't thought about was the usage of grapples and stuff for the parkour. I thought that was cool. The way they showed, like, you're able to grapple onto stuff like hook shot onto places, and all the different flips you do, because you're a ninja. You can't just normally jump. You have to, front flip.
I would expect she's going to be dancing even when she walks.
Yes.
It has to be a flourish.
Yeah, it's got to be a flourish.
You can't be caught just normal jumping. You know.
A Dead Captain says, how's PC performance? I'm assuming he means for Kingdom Come. It is generically fairly good. There's some issues, but this is a beta. Like, I'm sure we're going to get at least 1 or 2 performance patches.
Did you try it on consoles?
So, no, not yet. I asked for a console code, but I think overall you should expect pretty much identical plus for this game. It's the same engine,
right?
It's the same stuff. It feels like overall it's just going to be like a boom. Here is your baseline. They've stated that's pretty much what they planned to do. That's what I feel like we got. And then in the next day or so, I'm going to go back, reload up, because I've got the old one installed, reload up, do some comparisons. But yeah, overall performance was good. It was, there were some hitches here or there, but you never quite know if that's the game or Windows or, a browser. I tried to do it on a clean system, and I have yet to do my hardware testing on the 3 devices. That'll be, or the 3 video cards and PCs. That'll be probably this weekend, most likely. Yeah, this weekend, most likely. But I think I've seen other people saying they were getting pretty good FPS or good FPS in many places. I would agree. Currently, FSR and DLSS are both supported.
No Dragon's Dogma 2.
No. No place has been. I had a weird issue, but I legitimately do not think it was the game. I think it was just like the PC, where I was getting some wonky FPS, dropped out and went skyrocketed right back up. It's just one of those things where some process must have got hooked in and was like, hey, I want all your CPU power right now. But I could tell that there was something going on, jumped out, jumped back in. That's PC gaming for you when you have a multiple, windowed device and you have different things going on. So we'll have to see if they do a day 1 driver, because I haven't seen anybody in chat. If you have seen that they dropped the day 1 driver, I haven't seen NVIDIA drop it yet. And I will say this, I don't know if Johnny has this or Silver. I got to tell you guys personally, I feel like day 1 drivers are almost always problematic for me. I don't know what it is, man. I feel like they'll say it gets better performance on some game, and I'll have been reviewing the game and test the new driver, and it'll be, maybe a frame better, sometimes not at all, and then sometimes it'll mess up something else. I don't know. I'm not a big day 1 driver, NVIDIA driver fan.
It's hard to say for us, I think, given that we rarely get access.
Yeah, you're not getting access early.
Pre-release builds.
Yeah.
So to judge that difference, but I haven't noticed any significant issues with day 1 drivers on my end.
Yeah. And then talking a bit about Shadows for a second, Shadows, the reports I got with Shadows pre-sales were really good prior to the delay. I assume they'll be just as good after, if not better. I think they've done a fairly good job explaining different things. There will still be people mad about the other stuff. This is a little like Veilguard, where people, there are certain things that somebody's going to not like or like.
There are people very invested in the game's failure or hating on it. Yeah.
But when you look at what they've offered, I think that most likely some people will decide not to pre-order it. Some people will have decided now they will pre-order it, especially with some of the changes, or not changes actually, but some of the extra explanations of stealth and how those work, like Johnny was saying, that we've seen in these videos. So yeah, I think it's pretty, I don't think any game's going to hit Valhalla, because Valhalla was basically right in the middle to tail end of COVID. So there was certainly a lot more people sitting at the house ready to do things and talk about things than there are now. But personally, I feel that this one has a better chance of hitting right where Valhalla had a lot of complaints about, being bloated. And there were a lot of buggy issues with Valhalla. It certainly sounds like they know that. That's my hope, is that.
And I think it will at least feel very different than the recent Assassin's Creed games, just because the nature of the movement is so inspired in the Asian style and the ninja stuff and everything. it just by nature is very different. How people jump, how they move, how they fight, and everything. Whereas one of the complaints was that Valhalla felt pretty similar to, let's say,
dude,
you know, Odyssey or
so weird that when you get in Valhalla, it's a story about giant Vikings, these massive guys that all the history is about these giant warriors, and you get into battle and you're like, what? It doesn't feel like that. The sense of impact isn't there. There's all kinds of, and by the way, now that it's patched up, I've enjoyed Valhalla. But it still is one of those titles that you're like, wow, you know, there's these other things I love about it, some things I hate, but the combat, even though it's workable, still feels weird. You're like, that is so odd that you don't get this. Canute, the voice actor who did him, is a bigger, brusquer guy. He does Last Kingdom TV show, or did it. The weight is missing. And so with your secondary, you have two characters. The bigger character, I'm hoping they hit with that weight, and the smaller character, you got the grapple and, you know, you've got your ninja moves. I hope you feel that difference, right? Like, I really do hope we feel that difference, because that's one thing. You're absolutely right. Valhalla just, it's got other things going for it that I know people loved, but it definitely wasn't the feeling of being a Viking. You know, it's like, I felt that when I pulled a skill off, I guess, a special skill, but not during combat. Combat just did not.
Normal combat, I mean, didn't feel.
The raids kind of tried to do it.
The what's did?
The raids.
Oh my God. Do you mean where you fucking have to get in those fucking doors?
Yeah.
You call the people like you.
Yeah. Like when you would pull up in the ship, like land the ship, and then open the doors with people. Yeah. Like you said,
you blow the horns, and it's like,
set
let's
fire
go,
to the
homies.
roofs and whatnot. Torches.
I liked those moments, but in combat, it still didn't feel like I was a Viking. That's why I like the game at times, because those did feel good. But then you'd have the fucking locked door in the center of every single outpost that you had to go and search. It just like, there was a lot in that game that felt like they didn't want to take too many. They didn't want to put any adjustments that he was a Viking. And I can't say they did that with any others either. I was just hoping. I would say at times I felt like Odyssey did a better job in that, but Odyssey was missing some things that are brain dead too. You know, you're just like, and remember, Valhalla didn't have until the DLC. Valhalla, you couldn't do two one-handed weapons, right? It's either two one-handed. I think that was Valhalla, because I remember people were talking about Odyssey was missing shields, right?
Oh, for sure.
So Odyssey was missing shields.
The fact that you couldn't be a hoplite.
Yeah, you couldn't be the very thing that, like, it's sort of known for. And then in Valhalla, DLC or a patch added two one-handed swords. And it was just
you could have like two hammers, I believe.
All I know is it was missing that, because I went back and looked and found the patch / you know, DLC thing that added it. So it was just weird. You know, it's just weird. It's the way it is. It's the way it is. I mean, they do a lot of stuff really well. I like a lot of parts of their games, but that was brain dead as shit. This one seems like they've got a pretty good idea. And guys, I have a sort of a soft spot for the dual protagonist, because I like Jacob and Evie from Syndicate. So I'm hoping we get something like that.
Yeah. Say? No, that's a good point. If we have some good banter between them or not, that'll be really good.
Or if they just feel different. Imagine if they feel different enough, Johnny, that you even have a small inkling of wanting to play that mission again with the other character. That will be
if I can like kick a door down with the guy, as just like one example of a difference of, you know, just the presence and physicality and stuff, compared to maybe the ninja where she's like sneaking in and stuff.
Has to go
that
up
sort
and
of
over.
Thing would sell it for me.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Silver? Sorry, buddy.
I'm just still finding it very difficult to muster up much interest for the time period. Again.
Really?
Yeah, Sengoku Jidai, like, it's pretty much
it's been done a lot.
In that time period.
But there's something about it, like Silver. I love the you know, I absolutely love that setting and the idea of like all the roofs. Yeah, like, you know how they're showing the parkour in the roofs, and I love the look of everything and the tiles and all that stuff. So yeah, it's been done a lot, but dude, I'm still.
I mean, it's been.
But I feel you could still get a lot of that iconography by going earlier than that.
Yeah.
Or even maybe later.
Sure.
To the Edo period.
Yeah, I'll just have to see.
There's a lot of stuff that could be mined. That hasn't necessarily been.
There's probably reasons that they have in the story for Assassin's Creed as well. Like, I don't really know why.
I think it's just that it is. I think it's just that it's the easy, marketable, sellable.
Yeah.
Period of Japanese history. It's the one everybody is really familiar with. Everyone outside of Japan.
It's the one that's overall celebrated more, seen more.
Yeah.
Like, it only makes sense. Let's see. Oregon says, I haven't liked an AC since Black Flag, just not my thing anymore. That's sad. Assassin's Creed Primal, just go all the way back. I would play the shit. I would play the shit out of Assassin's Creed Primal. It has a comfortable formula for me where it doesn't have to change much. Yeah, that's the thing that I think a lot of people mistake, is that when you're in a Discord like mine or Johnny's, or you follow a channel that reviews, and I also do the occasional walking the walk kind of stuff, and we critique things, it's easy to forget that the general consumer and the general person may just see ninjas and samurai and say, I'm in. And I think that it's very easy to ignore the general consumer, and or somebody will say, oh, well, these games haven't been good since, let's say, Assassin's Creed 2, when the person you're talking to is 19. And Assassin's Creed 2 came out when they were 8.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, and you're just like, dude, you do realize how fucking time works, right? And I think that's the big thing when we talk about Final Fantasy, when we talk about any game with a series of titles for a long period of time. I had somebody tell me that they didn't like the new Forza Horizons. They liked 2. And I'm like, I get where you're coming from. I totally get where you're coming from, but 2 isn't coming out right now. This new one is coming out. You have to, you know, like, and for a podcast discussion, it does make sense. But for a understanding other people, you get people going, I can't believe this person likes Metal Gear Phantom Pain. The original Metal Gear was great. And you're like, dude, that person wasn't
Metal Gear Revengeance, which is so much different from any of the other Metal Gears.
Yeah.
Is a really different one. Yeah.
And you're like, that dude was sucking on hind tit when Metal Gear 1 came out. Like that person was legitimately on breast milk at that time. Like, especially with gaming having such a long period of time and such a number of titles. I love some of the older titles too, but at some point you have to step back and just be like, what we're getting is this right here.
That's where I was when Origins came out. I was like, this doesn't feel like Assassin's Creed to me.
Yeah.
And then we moved on to Odyssey, and then I saw, okay, well, this is clearly where they're going. So this is not, Assassin's Creed is no longer what I felt it was. It's become this other thing.
This other thing, right? And you know what? I agree with you, because my favorites came later in the Assassin's Creed series. My favorites were Rogue and Syndicate, which are much later than your one.
Mine was Unity.
And yours was Unity. And so I would say I really did also like Brotherhood. But was that the multiplayer? Well, whatever. I remember.
Yeah, Brotherhood introduced multiplayer.
Yeah, so when I got to Origins, I was also like, oh, interesting. They're changing it all up. Of course, you know, I do like open world, so I was a little bit more open to that, pun intended. But then when I played it, I was like, okay, I see where they're going. And there's some weird shit that's changed, and each one I think has improved. Valhalla definitely had some issues, but it's like I saw where they were going. I do appreciate Mirage, though. I know that not everybody liked Mirage, but I do appreciate that they at least
I do too.
Hey, we understand that there are some things. It's just they used Valhalla's engine because Mirage was going to be DLC. That or at least they knew they were doing Valhalla's engine, which is a different feel than Syndicate. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, I went back to play Syndicate, dude, and I had a great time, and the guys were in the chat, and we were all laughing as we were pulling off the combos. But at the same time, I found myself missing a couple things from Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla that weren't in Syndicate. And I was like, oh, shit. You know, I see some of the improvements, actually. Go ahead.
I do think Syndicate probably has the best stealth systems in the series.
Yeah. Syndicate was... Syndicate Black Flag felt a little... Origin. Did you ever? I don't know about you. I actually feel like Black Flag is the first of the Origins, Odyssey, Valhalla.
Yeah, I mean, Black Flag was another one that didn't. that I didn't like as much as everybody else,
Neither
because
did
to
I.
me, Black Flag didn't feel like Assassin's Creed
It feels like
at all.
0.5 of the new ones.
Yeah,
Yeah, there was something about that just I don't hate it, but there's something about it that feels like they were already they were already thinking towards these other ones, and some of it got into Black Flag. Black Flag's
yeah,
pretty bloated too. I mean, just
I mean,
being completely honest.
to me, the core precept of Assassin's Creed was always the historical tourism. Like, it was
Yeah.
going back to Accra or Rome or Venice or these historical locations, and trying to see these kind of see them through this modern interpretive lens, and seeing these incredible buildings and marvels of architecture, and physically climbing up on them and getting a sense of the scale and then and the grandeur of them in a way that you can't necessarily even when you visit them as a tourist and see them in real life, like, because you can't actually climb up on them and whatnot.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
We aren't always limber, but
go to Stonehenge and just start climbing on shit. Also, I felt a little bit of this when I did Indy and I went to the Giza, and
right,
I think their sense of scale is even better than Assassin's Creed. I think the sense of scale when you come up to the bottom of the pyramid,
also because it's in first person,
Indy,
right?
First person, I'm sure. And I remember when I was playing that for review, and I looked up and I was like, "Oh damn!" And it looks great, so like that helps. But I looked at that pyramid, and I was like, "Dude, that's phenomenal tourism." Like, just the feeling of it doesn't have to be perfect. I don't this thing of,
and then
like,
you get that this was built 5,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 5,000 years ago by people who were drinking their dinner. Yeah, did a pretty goddamn good job too. And I can't even stack cords of wood behind my house. Those guys stacked that like 5,000 years ago, still sticking around.
Yeah, and cut those stones like.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I mean, unless you're Joe Rogan, you believe it's aliens. Johnny, were you going to say something before I mentioned?
Or you're
no.
Carson and think they're granaries, not tombs. Yeah.
Oh God, I didn't know that. Yeah. Let's see. Alpslish says, what games really flip the script during the course of gameplay where the mechanics completely change? Mechanics? Ooh, Prey. I think that Prey is one of the better games when you get to the 1/2 to 3/4 part of Prey, 2016 Prey, and you make a choice. I think depending on which choice you make, that truly felt awesome and game-changing in what I had to do and who was a bad guy and a good guy. That would be my answer. Prey, for sure. Any others you guys can think of? That's ballsy to flip the script like halfway through a game. That's like, I mean, I don't even know if it's ballsy as much as it's almost like questionable in your logic if you do that, because people just finally getting good at something, you flip all the mechanics in the script.
Yeah.
Rogue, because you were a bad guy, or not a bad guy, but rogue because you went rogue, but it didn't really it just flipped the.
No, the mechanics didn't really change.
The mechanics didn't change.
It's just a narrative.
It's just like you're the bad guy doing the same good guy stuff, or however you believe that one. Alien Isolation did this very poorly with getting the
Chrono Trigger killed its main character halfway through the story.
Spoiler! I'm just joking. Did it?
Like that was one of the big things. Yeah, like you start out playing as Chrono, as the central character, who's the main character of the party and whatnot, and everyone's following him. And then he ends up sacrificing himself in the fight against the ultimate bad guy, Lavos, where he's killed. And then the rest of the party has to sort of deal with the loss and the grief of that loss, and then basically try and bring him back to life.
I didn't know that, or at least I don't remember it. That was a SNES game, right? No,
yeah.
NES. SNES?
SNES. Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, that's some ancient times. Speaking about sucking on the hind tit, that was back when many of these people watching weren't alive.
Yeah, that was 98. Yeah, that was 98, a while ago.
Dude. I was just talking to somebody in the Discord. Everybody's talking about the year they were born, and somebody's like 93, and I was like, oh my
25
God.
years ago, man.
Damn, seriously? 93? Like, many people have graduated by that point. What else do we got before we wrap it up? Do we have anything? First of all, I want to say thanks to everybody watching. If you get a chance to become a YouTube member, you can join the Discord. It helps the channel. We're getting hit pretty hard by January, February stuff. Lack of views and shit. It's a weird time. So I definitely appreciate it. But if not, I hope you all have an awesome week. What are we going to do for the weekend? Anybody gonna do? I was one. Lombardi says I was one. There we go. Anybody doing anything cool?
A new graphic novel called The Shadow Army.
The Shadow Army.
Awesome.
Or Army of Shadows.
World War One or Two?
World War II. Basically about the Eastern Front from the German perspective.
Gotcha.
Which is pretty interesting.
What about you, Johnny?
Pretty cool. I'm reading a couple books. I got some manga, actually. Getting into some manga. Some people might know in chat, Chainsaw Man
I know that.
Is an anime that popped up, so I'm reading the manga for it, so I can see what happens in the story, and it's been cool. It's the books are really short. I don't know, Carrick, if you've seen any manga.
Yeah,
books.
I do have some manga.
Yeah,
I do actually.
They're
have
like
some.
pretty small, so you have like 200 pages for a volume, but it's so small, and because it's all pictures, right? It kind of goes super fast, so it is cool to go through those. And
let's see, I've been watching some. I watched All Secret Level again. I watched what is that? Blood, Love, and Robots, or Semen, Love, and Robots.
Love, Sex. There's no semen.
Love,
no
Sex,
semen.
Semen, and Robots.
Love, Sex, Robots.
So I watched Love, Sex, Semen, and Robots, and I did that because our Discord's been having some really cool voice chats lately where we're talking about like what gets you into anime or doesn't get you into anime, what gets you into something. And when I was watching that in Secret Level, it started getting me. I'm not going to jump in. I'm not going to be watching like Samurai Champloo again or anything like that. But I was trying to sort of identify what I like between Western and Eastern influenced cartoons, why I like Don Bluth versus,
right.
A lot of people like what is that called? The main Japanese artist that everybody talks about, Spirits
Miyazaki.
Within, or Miyazaki. Yeah. So we sat in there, and so I've been rewatching to sort of come to grips with like what I like and what I don't like, especially like why I like Don Bluth and stuff like that. So that was really good.
Has like Titan AE is kind of anime.
Titan AE is very close. Titan AE is very.
Yeah.
In fact, that was brought up because I think that with later years he did definitely sort of like you saw some other influences coming in, which I thought were great. We also talked about Sid Mead, who basically the concept artist behind Mass Effect. A lot of futuristic Oblivion, futuristic sci-fi look. Sid Mead's one of my favorite artists of all time, like all time. And we've been doing a lot of those kind of conversations of like what got us in. For example, it came up where Solar was playing Mass Effect. And we were talking about why is it that like somebody would like Mass Effect, but not like Starfield. And I'm not talking about the game mechanics. We're talking about like the art. What is it about NASA Punk versus Sid Mead's style of futuristic? Flash Gordon, I would say in many ways, you're more Star Trek-ish actually, because of, how like sleek things are a lot of times in Mass Effect. Not always, but. And we had a great conversation about that. That's actually been the major thing I've been doing is catching up on those kind of things and sort of trying to come to grips with discussion points for us in there. Cause that's where I've moved a lot of the discussion. It's been really enjoyable. And then we did the No HUD video. What was that? Podcast about 2 weeks ago where I talked about No HUD for the patrons, and have been going back to old games and turning HUDs off to see like what games just do not work with no HUD. And it is stunning how game developers will give you the option to turn the HUD off and it will actually break the game. Yeah. Quite a few games will break.
Yes, I'm well aware.
Yeah. And it's so funny because I've always remembered the occasional Assassin's Creed where a prompt wouldn't show up.
And I'll still try to make do.
and try to make do. And so, like, how do you turn it on for a second, turn it off, and just jumping in there to see no HUD versus HUD, and then still studying studies about GPS and waypoint tracking for a person versus GPS, HUD versus no HUD, how people come into a game. And then I'm doing some consultation, which has been really fun for game development. No game I'll ever cover on the channel. We have a rule for that, but that's been fun to sort of talk to people about what we see on this side and what Discord people see in a game that, like, let's say a game that just gets announced and they've got 2 weeks until it's bought and a company's surprised that it doesn't do well, trying to sort of discuss the ins and outs of the industry and PR and how you how you tell people about your title, because that's actually important. What were we going to say?
What you said about art kind of reminded me of what has become one of my major laments of this digital age we've sort of gone into, which is the downfall of the library, really. Because the library really was where I spent most of my time as a kid. And like just bringing home like tons of like a bag full of graphic novels like this thick of all sorts of artists, like every Japanese artist, Belgian, Dutch, British, whatever. And just seeing this huge influx of all these different styles and all this like absorbing all this information in this one spot, which in some way has become the internet, but the internet doesn't quite match it, I don't think.
Doesn't match it
in the same way.
I don't think.
And really, like today, certainly here, in my country, libraries have been downsized considerably to where a lot of the shelves there are now basically empty.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just immensely sad to go to the library and just see shelves of like that are empty, no books. Yeah, it breaks my heart a little bit.
Yeah, Johnny and I've talked about reading versus PDF reading, and there are studies that show there is a drop-off in retention when it's digital for whatever reason, probably because your sensory input when you turn a page, all kinds of weird shit that subconsciously works for people. But I know personally for me, a book also, when I went to the library and checked out a book, there was effort put in because I was going someplace to get something. And you can attribute that to all the stuff we've ever talked about in here, from buying a game to review versus not. If there's effort, if there's not, whatever, if you get socks for Christmas, if you don't, if you had to work for something, if you got it free. When you go to a library, I just want to say, when you go to a library and you check it out, there was something about my level of effort was higher when I got that home. And even if I didn't get through the first couple pages, I would continue I had brought it home. Like, there was a little bit of ego maybe involved where I was like, listen, I was dumb enough to check this fucking thing out. I'm not going to like put it down. I got to figure it out. And I would sit and read through it.
There was also a sense of history. I don't know if you guys had like a little card in the very final, the very last cover of it, like the back cover of the book.
Yeah.
Where there would be a little card that would show the history of people who had
absolutely
borrowed the book previously.
Checked it out. Yeah.
So you could actually see its history.
Yep.
Like, so there was a sense of history and like, oh, this book has passed through all these hands and whatnot before it got to me. That sort of enriched the experience on some level.
I still remember checking out a book and it would say 79 for a check, and they would have it wasn't like a super popular book. It'd be like something like sci-fi wasn't super popular where I was. We lived in a hick town. So like maybe only a couple of us were checking it out, and you'd see that book's print date was 78, Piers Anthony or something, and 79 would be its first checkout, and it had been checked out 12 times, and you were the 13th, and you're like, in 30 years, are you shitting me? Like, this thing is like, to me, there's something about that. I would look at those. I absolutely love checking the checkout cards. Johnny, anything else to add before we wrap it up?
I think that's about it for me. Yeah, making some videos, getting some workouts in, enjoy some shows as well. Pretty much it.
Yeah, man, there's been a lot of good stuff on lately. We've been watching the world's just the cheesiest shit on purpose so I can get work done at the same time. And they're terrible, man. They're terrible shows. They're terrible. Like, I don't even want to say them out loud. They're that bad. But it's
Gossip Girl.
Oh, no, dude. Gossip Girl would be well above what we're watching. Well above. But I always try to alternate it with some other stuff. I found some Western cartoons that I hadn't seen in a while that we're going to check out this weekend. But there was something I was going to tell you guys that was pretty fucking sweet. And God damn it, if I can't not remember what it was. But there was something that was important. And the moment I turn everything off, I'm going to be like, damn it. There was something I wanted
It's usually how
remember
it goes,
instantly.
Yeah, I can't remember. Anyway, that'll be it for us. If you guys get a chance, I would love for you to, like I said, become a YouTube member. You just click the thing, you become a subscriber. Also, make sure you hit subscribe and all, because we do have exclusive stuff we'll have like Kingdom Come. I can't say, and some other games. The games you assume, those will be there because there's code out for a lot of those. And it also allows you to become a Discord member. Thanks to everybody in the Discord. Also, thanks to everybody watching. Peace out. Enjoy the rest of your week. Check out Johnny Plays online. He's online, is what I meant to say. On YouTube, Johnny Plays, where he does League of Legends. Subscribe for Dog Cam. Yeah, if we get 100 subscribers, we'll put up a Dog Cam. All right, peace out, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Take care.
Dazzle.
Boom.
I cannot